Welcome, everyone. This is Michael Gibbs. I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Architects. Super excited to be here today to welcome you all for our question and answer session. I've been working in this technology field for over 25 years, and I remember when I kicked off my career, how hard it was to actually begin. For example, in the beginning of my career, I wanted to get that first network engineer job, and I wanted it so badly. And I had done what everybody else had done. I had went and got a bunch of certifications, and I went and applied for jobs, and I got rejected. And it wasn't until I spoke to some industry experts that could really help me get hired. And at that point, I knew exactly what was necessary, and I instantly got hired. And I went from working in medicine to, literally speaking, being the lead architect on my team at the world's largest internet service provider in less than 6 months. And that's why I do this here, because I don't want anybody to struggle. So if you're kicking off your first cloud architect job or your first solution architect job, or you want to be a network engineer or a network architect or a cloud engineer, I want you to build that perfect cloud computing career. That's realistically speaking what I want to do. And I just want to help you get there and help you get there as fast as possible. And that's the reason I do these question and answer sessions. And that's the reason I do them completely free, because I want to know that you're going to have the absolute best opportunity at your career. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're doing these free question and answer sessions. So if you've got any questions about your cloud computing career, please bring them, because this is something that's really, really, really important for us to make sure that you can build the perfect career. So now that you know about what we're doing and why we're doing it, please, by all means, feel free to bring forth some questions for us. One of the things I wanted to tell you about is that today, we are really, really excited that this afternoon we're going to be running a subnetting workshop. Now, I've been working in technology for well over 25 years now, and I got to tell you, if the network doesn't work, nothing works. I mean, literally speaking, if the network doesn't work, nothing works. And I'm going to tell you, most of my life, I've seen all these errors in the network, and all these errors in the network, do you know where they come from? They start with bad IP addressing. And that's the reason that we run into these challenges all the time. So because of this, we want to make sure everybody knows networking. That's the reason that last week, we're on the wrong, and that's the reason that last week, when we were out there and we talked about networking, there were people out there that needed some assistance. That was part of it. But realistically speaking, at the same time, we saw when we did the advanced networking course that there were so many people that didn't know subnetting. And I also have to say that in my career of 25 years in networking, I've met plenty of people that didn't know subnetting, and those little minor IP addressing mistakes, they add up and they become a big, big, big mess or major mess of problems. So that's the reason we do these things. So we're super happy to have you all here today to ask any kind of questions that you may have. So do you have any questions about building your career? Now, apologies, it looks like we actually started this live stream under the wrong names. We were really going to be talking about questions and answers, and I know it says networking for cloud computing, so if that's throwing anybody off, apologize. We'll be doing that this afternoon at 1 p.m. But today we're here to answer any questions that you should possibly be answering. So Chris, if you can try and look through the questions. Now, Chris, it looks like we kicked off networking for cloud computing instead of the question and answer session. So we may have to be a little more agile with these questions as we bring them up on the screen. So the first question is from Poonam. What are the basic concepts of networking you should learn, even though you work on application architecture level? Well, Poonam, here's the thing. If you actually are going to work in architecture design, meaning cloud architecture design, then it's going to be absolutely critical for you to know networking. Now, in application architecture, there's probably not that much networking you really need to know, because you're focusing on more on the application and the code. Likewise, people that like me that focus on networking don't focus at all on the code. So, I want to make that clear that, these are very, very, very different careers. Now, there are certain things that everybody should know about networking, and they should be things like subnetting, for example. That should be something that everybody should know. Everybody should know what NAT is. Everybody should truly have a concept of DNS. These are something that are really, really, really important for you to know. So I'd say those things are there that are really important. Now, it's really good if people understand about VPNs versus direct connections, or VPNs versus private lines, whichever you talk about it. Those are the things that are really critical for the application architect. It would be bonus if you understand VLANs, and it would be bonus if you understand .1Q tagging. It would also be bonus if you understood BGP. These things would be really good, but IP addressing definitely there. So those would be the things that I would say are going to be your minimum level of knowledge that you need to have for the application architect side. But Poonam, if you ever want to go from application architecture to cloud architecture, well, then it's going to change everything. Under those auspices, then IP addressing becomes very important, and subnetting and supernetting become absolutely critical. And then knowledge of BGP, UBGP, and IBGP becomes absolutely critical. And then after those two things, the things that become absolutely critical would be things like knowledge of interior gateway protocols, such as OSPF or intermediate systems to intermediate systems, would be pretty important. Then, understanding of switching and spanning tree and rapid spanning tree would become real important. Understanding of 802.1q, VLAN tagging, Q and Q tagging, Ethernet over MPLS, software-defined networking, NAT, one-to-one NAT, one-to-many NAT, static NAT, dynamic NAT. Those would be the kind of things that would be the minimum knowledge of networking for the cloud architect. So I've given you for the application architect, the cloud architect, and in these two situations, that should give you most of what you need to know. But it's always good to know about the network. And here's why I love the network. The network is the foundation. The stronger somebody's foundation is, the better the person will actually do in their career. And that foundation is completely critical. So networking is the foundation of everything. Without networking, we have absolutely nothing. Chris, if you want to bring in the next question.
Yes, I sure will. So it actually looks like this is not the stream for this afternoon. Somehow the title, so the title indicates that it is. So we still have the stream for this afternoon that has not started. So,
okay, perfect.
The thumbnail indicates that this is questions. But
okay, great.
So I think
why don't we do this? As you bring in the next question, maybe you can just change that description real fast and resave it.
Yeah.
If that's
so the description is accurate. It's only the title. So I was actually going to ask you in real time, can I change the title?
Please do so we don't confuse others.
All right. So here's the next question.
Jonathan Brown, completely new here. So if I take subnetting and networking is important if I'm doing your workshop. Okay, so Jonathan Brown, I don't completely understand that, so I'm going to do my best to translate that.
So it looks like they're saying the way they understand it. So I take it that subnetting and networking is important if you're doing a workshop.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Thank you.
That's how I interpret it. That's their understanding.
Okay. Sounds good.
As a newbie.
Sounds great. Okay, so let me completely understand that. Explain this. So subnetting is realistically a form of addressing. So networking includes routing, switches, WAN connections, LAN connections, all kinds of routing protocols, and so many things. And subnetting is the most elemental foundation of networking. For example, it's the most element thing anytime we're dealing with a computer, or even a house for that matter. If it's going to be in a network, it's going to have to be identified. So for example, the way your house has an address, and your address is unique, meaning if I want to send an address to you at 123 Main Street at Anytown, USA, 23456 zip code, or whatever the case is, that's what identifies you. And that's how you get actual mail, for example. Now, when we're dealing with networking, Jonathan, we have to have an address. And every one of us needs to have an address for us. And the way you design your network and the addressing for people is the foundation for all communication on the network. So IP addressing specifically itself is really critical. So what happens, and we'll talk about this much more in the subnetting workshop today, is as follows. When we're out there in a normal environment and we're doing all the cool stuff that we do, we put an address. But the way we put the addresses on the device and which addresses we use changes everything. I'm sure you've all been to a big city. that's well designed, where they've got good roads, and the roads can get you from point A to point B, and you don't get stuff in traffic because the city thought about the capacity, and the roads are straight, and they've got good entrances and exits. We've all been there. That's an efficient city. We've all been to a city that's an older city, where basically the people designed the inner workings of the city many, many years ago, when they never expected the city to grow. And then they do these kind of things, and all of a sudden the city grew, and then there's new roads, and they're not laid out properly, and then you get stuck in traffic circles and lost. We've all been there. That's what happens when the roads aren't laid out right. Now, roads are the routes or the path that we all go to get to places in a city. And when it comes to our networking, our roads are routes, and our routes are subnets. So basically speaking, the way we set up the addresses determines the path of our traffic completely through our systems. And if we get that path of traffic optimal, our systems work great, and they perform with high performance, and they're available, and they're there all the time. And if we get this addressing scheme wrong, everything falls apart. We may get away with it for a little while, but everything falls apart. And when things fall apart like that, everything breaks. So because of that, this is why it's really, really, really so important for us to make sure we get the addresses set up. And because of that, that's why we do all these things that are so critical. So make sure that you learn the networking, and make sure you learn the subnetting, and that's why we're doing it, and that's why we're doing it completely free. So that's why we're doing it. Super important topic. And then Chris, if you can bring in the next one.
Yeah, so the next one, I think we normally wouldn't answer, but it came in while people thought this was a technical Q&A, so I'm going to bring it up. So
that's okay,
because it was asked under the other auspices.
Sounds good. Dimson Mentor, what is Cloud Hub, and how does it differ from Transit Gateway? Okay, Dimson Mentor, I will tell you exactly what Cloud Hub is, and I'm going to tell you it's 99% the same as Transit Gateway. In fact, when we talk about Cloud Hub and we talk about Transit Gateway, we're really talking about 30-year-old route reflector BGP technology. It's old tech, not new tech. And the main difference between Cloud Hub and Transit Gateway, but then I'll really describe what it is, just to let you know, is Cloud Hub only works with VPNs, and Transit Gateway works with both VPNs and private lines or direct connections. That's it. It's all the same other than that. So what is Cloud Hub and Transit Gateway? Here's the thing. In networking, we have transitive routing, which is 99% of everything we've always done. And we have what's called non-transitive routing. And here's the difference. my left hand is going to be a site, my right hand is going to be a site, and I'm going to be a site. So left hand is site A, my head is site B, and my right hand is site C. In normal routing off of the cloud, normal routing and all routing except for IBGP, what happens is I learn a route from site A, I tell it to site B, and then B tells the route to site C, and then C tells their routes to site B, and then site B sells the routes to site A, and now site A and B know how to talk to each other. Everybody's going to be great. Everybody can talk to each other. And that's why it's called transitive routing. A told B and B told C. And because of that, everybody knows everybody's information, and they can all talk to each other. Now, non-transitive routing is as follows. A tells B, and B doesn't tell C. So C doesn't know about A. And C tells its routes to B, but B never tells A. So nobody knows about anybody. And because nobody knows about anybody, nobody can talk to anybody. And that's non-transitive routing. So generally speaking, all routing is transitive. But what happened is, what happened is in the internet, we're dealing with a protocol called interior BGP. And interior BGP is non-transitive. Now, interior BGP is not transitive for a reason. We don't want to become something called a transit autonomous system for the entire internet. We're trying to avoid routing loops. We're trying to do a few reasons. So let's just talk about going from transitive to non-transitive. If the difference is in transitive routing, A tells B and B tells C, and C tells B and B tells A, that's transitive routing. And if non-transitive routing is A tells B, but B doesn't tell C, and C doesn't tell B, or C tells B, but B doesn't tell A, nobody knows about anybody. So that's inherently secure. So let's think about when you'd want transitive routing versus when you wouldn't run transitive routing. Let's say I'm a computer manufacturer right now, and I want to go peer or connect to 2 other companies that are sitting on the cloud. Let's say I make servers and I do VPC peering and I connect to AMD for their CPUs and I connect to Intel for their CPUs. Right now, if I want to know where my lead times are when my CPUs are coming, if I know about AMD and I know about Intel, I can talk to each one of them, and guess what? I can order my parts. Now, that works perfectly with non-transitive routing because does AMD and Intel need to talk to each other through me? Of course they don't. And if I tell AMD about Intel and Intel about AMD and I share each other's routes, they're going to be talking to each other through me. And 2 things happen. One is now I've broken my security. And 2, AT&T as well as Intel's traffic is now going through me. As the traffic comes through my system, I have to pay for their traffic. It uses up my capacity and it can take away my entire network. So we never want to do that. So what is Cloud Hub? What is Transit Gateway? It's basically a BGP route reflector, and it basically says, forget the rules of non-transitive routing. So in BGP, we had a route reflector. Here's what a route reflector would be. A would tell B of its routes, and B, and it would normally not advertise it to C because it's non-transitive. And the route reflector, which is basically Cloud Hub or Transit Gateway, basically says, break those rules. If A tells B, B should tell C. And if C tells B, B will tell A. That is transitive routing. That is Cloud Hub. And that is the same as a BGP route reflector. You do eBGP peering to the site, and then your routes will be exchanged. And because everybody's routes will be exchanged, then you'll be able to reach everything, and it becomes transitive routing. And that's why Transit Gateway and Cloud Hub are used. They are effectively the same. The only difference is Cloud Hub only works with VPNs, and Transit Gateway works with VPNs as well as private lines, also known as direct connections. Chris, if you'd like to bring in the next question. Poonam, yes, mostly migration to cloud, going to start with gathering requirements. What would be the basic things or guidelines for a landing zone? Prepping for cloud infrastructure. So here's the thing. A landing zone, realistically speaking, is not really preparing anything for the cloud infrastructure. Most landing zones are typically speaking have something to do with actual databases and data lakes, where basically you would take your data from one of these applications, you would run your data through some form of mapping reduction, maybe it's Python Spark or something else, and then you would place them into it looks more of a landing zone. So that's more of a big data environment when we're talking about landing zones, as opposed to cloud infrastructure. But Poonam, when you're really going to start with requirements gathering, what kind of requirements are you going to gather? They start not with the tech, and they never should start with the tech. If the requirements start with the tech, Poonam, we have a problem, and we have a massive problem. The problem is we're going to build the tech, and the tech may be bad for the business or good for the business. Businesses don't buy tech because they like tech. Businesses buy tech to solve business problems. So Poonam, the first question is, Mr. CEO or Miss CEO or Mr. or Mrs. Computer Tech Executive or executive from the company, what are your challenges? What are your goals? Oh, wait, you want to grow sales? What kind of business are you? You're an e-commerce business? Okay, what do I know in my business acumen about e-commerce businesses and how can I increase sales? That's where we would start. It could also be that, wait, our customer satisfaction is not good enough, and we need a plan to improve customer satisfaction, to improve our customer retention, improve our sales. So Poonam, then the job of the infrastructure person, the architect, again, is going to go back and ask that customer, tell us what you need. What are your competitors doing? How can we get you better? And then Poonam, we're going to also start with tell us about the laws in your country that regulate your business. Tell us about any regulatory bodies, for example, boards that you have to join, or other kinds of environments or non-governmental agencies that you have to be part of. These are the start with requirements gathering. This has to happen long before the tech. Only after we do these, then we can even think about what the actual design is. And then the design and the solution has to go back to the customer and ask the customer, how will this impact your business? So Poonam, all these things are architect things long before we get there. All those other things are engineering things, regardless if they're called architect or not, are all engineering things. And engineering things are really important because somebody has to go build these things. So after you know the business, and you've got to start with the business, then you've got to start looking into the infrastructure. What are their servers, the capacity, the CPU, the disk performance, the kind of cores in these things? What are their CPU utilization, memory utilization, disk utilization? What's their routing look like? Are they using an IGP? What IGP? What's the performance? What's the throughput? What's the network architecture look like? Is it a collapsed core? Is it core access distribution? What's the IP addressing scheme look like? What's the routing? What routing protocols are used? Do they have NAT? Do they need NAT? Are they purchasing other companies? Do they have a big WAN? Is the WAN latency sensitive, non-latency sensitive? Then this is just starting the network and some of the servers. Then we have to evaluate their containers and their container strategy. We have to evaluate their security and their security strategy. What do their firewalls look like? Do they have IDS, IPS systems? Do they have VPN concentrators? What is the net? What does their demilitarized zones look like? What kind of anti-malware protection are they using? What kind of firewalling are they using? What types of other things are they using? Any layer 2 access control list, any 3-layer access control list, et cetera, et cetera. Are they locking down their systems and disabling unnecessary services and patching these systems? Then we've got to ask about their storage, block, file, object, the kind of speed, the kind of performance. What are these environments doing? And I got to tell you, Poonam, this could be a 3-day discussion about somebody's storage. So it's not going to be something that's like in the certified solution architect professional, something easy like that, where you just have to know that object storage is S3. You need to really know about these kind of things. So that'll give you something really good for the basic infrastructure. And then after that, you have to ask about the applications and what the applications do and the traffic flow through the applications. You have to ask about the security and of what they need. Not only have they been hacked, but what's the cost of being hacked? What's the value of their intellectual property, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Poonam, I ask probably 150 to 250 questions based upon the customer. I have a really good checkoff list that I built for myself and built for my students. But these are the kind of things, and it's going to be long before we ever get to the technical piece. There are a lot of business pieces that are just so essential, which is why, Poonam, these are not engineering jobs, they're architecture jobs. And the architecture job is more about the non-technical side. It's really going to the business and figuring out how you can solve the business's challenges with technology. The engineering side is after the architect like me designs it, the engineer is the really smart person that knows how to go ahead and build it and fix it. So those are the kind of things that become really, really important. And I hope I answered your question. And please feel free, Poonam, to ask more and more and deeper questions, because I want to make sure we help you get the best career possible. And I love that you're asking these questions. I just wanted to give you some depth so you understand why I keep talking about these soft skills, because you can't ask those questions without the soft skills. Those leadership skills are going to need to be there, that executive presence, because you've got to go convince the CEO that they need to go spend this $100 million or $1 billion on the technology that you designed for them. So these are those kind of things that we're realistically talking about. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Let me remind everybody one more time that today we have a completely free subnetting workshop. Subnetting is the key to the IP addressing scheme that you'll use in your systems, and we find as we interview people, most people don't know this, and it needs to be in its foundational level. If you're going to do anything with regards to cloud architecture, anything with regards to any kind of data center architecture, network architecture, these systems are absolutely critical. Also, on Monday, we're going to have a how to get your first cloud architect job webinar. And on this webinar, we will tell you everything you need to do to get your first cloud architect job. We'll tell you what to study, how to build your brand, what hiring managers care about, how to skip HR so you skip the auto rejections and get seen directly by the hiring manager, and so much more. How to leverage your past experience, and just so much more. So we'd love you to join. It's going to be completely free, and it's on Monday. And then the link is in the description below. So please join us for this webinar. I promise you it'll be a great learning experience, and you'll learn just so much. And remember, this webinar is going to be on Zoom. So you can come, you can call in, you can ask as many questions as you possibly want. and we'll basically present for an hour, and you can talk to us and ask questions in real time. So please register. The link is in the description below, and let's do anything we can to help you. Harrisina. Hi, Mr. Gibbs. Can you let me know after joining your course, will there be any separate expenses to be made, like I should get the cert while pursuing your course? Harrisina, my course, our course, includes absolutely everything other than the fees to go talk to a vendor. So in our program, we include a tremendous amount. And our program is about 20 times deeper than anything else that's out there. Our program is 250 hours for people that have a tech background. And our program, the Cloud Architecture Development Program, we keep people in twice as long if they don't have a tech background. It's approximately 500 hours. And that's about what it takes us on average to get someone their first cloud architect job. And the program is completed. Either they've been with us for a year, or someone gets hired. And realistically speaking, I don't have anybody with me a year because they all seem to get cloud hired long before that. Sometimes very fast, sometimes a few weeks, sometimes a few months. But you know what? Whatever it takes, we're there. We do what we can for our students, and our students do great. So no, we provide every piece of training that you need. So there's nothing else to buy. The only thing that we recommend you do is we recommend you get the requisite certifications, which we tell you about in the course, and we tell you that this very clearly, and I'm going to say it again, no certification will ever get anybody a job ever. Certifications will not get you hired, but certifications will help you get an interview. And that AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional, in our mind, is the minimum level certification to get hired. We do not ask people to get multiple associate certifications, just straight as Certified Solution Architect Associate, Certified Solution Architect Professional. They're very easy to do by comparison to some of the more challenging things. And we deal with that, and we provide the training for this completely for free. So no matter which program you're going to be dealing with, if I took a Cisco boot camp, I'd still be paying Cisco or whoever it is for their vendor certification. So the fees that are charged by Amazon are charged by Amazon, not us. We have no insight into the Amazon business. So that's why it's separate. But all the training is there. We tell people that they need a lab and they should be doing things like building clouds. We provide the servers for that. The server access costs more than our entire training program. So the answer to that is, these are those kind of things that we would recommend, and there's no separate fees in our course. We also recommend that someone gets a practice exam, generally speaking, prior to taking an exam. Why do we recommend a practice exam? These exams are relatively easy compared to exams like the CCIE. Having said all of that, the way the questions are asked in a very tricky sort of way. These questions are very wordy. They're babbling some more, very wordy. And because of all the wordiness in the questions, we feel it's good for you to actually get a practice test ahead of time to get used to these questions so that you're not surprised on the exam, so you can pass the exam with a great score, and then you don't have to take it again, because a practice exam is far cheaper than the exam. So those are the only two things that we recommend. Everything else is completely provided in this course. VNHG, how do you find your entry-level solutions architect job? Well, VNHG, I don't know if there is a such thing as an entry-level solution architect job. So the key is not getting an entry-level solutions architect job, but getting a regular solutions architect job. So VNHG, I want to make it clear so you understand what's going on. As an architect, we're going to have to go interact with the client, clients' executives, CEOs of multi-billion-dollar and trillion-dollar companies, and we're going to have to talk to them, and we're going to have to ask them about their business. And there just is no 12-year-old that's doing that job or entry-level job. Now, having said all of this, we get people with no background hired as cloud architects and solution architects every single day, and it's not a hard thing to do. Here is the thing that I want everybody to remember. There's no such thing as entry level anymore. And if there are, they're going to be harder to get than regular level. Here's what entry level means. Entry level means I hire somebody. They're not really able to do the job. I hire them. I dedicate one other person 30 or 40% of their time to mentoring and tutoring the entry-level person, with the assumptions and the hopes that a year from now, 6 months to a year from now, that entry-level person can do something for me. So that's why we hire entry-level. Now, the hope of hiring entry-level is as follows. I get someone that's smart and motivated without any experience, which is great, which means no bad habits, which means I can teach this person everything they need to know. So if I can find someone really smart and really good with no experience, sometimes people like me like that because the person doesn't have any bad habits either. We can mold them. And in a very good economy, we love bringing in new people without a background because we can mold them and turn them into the perfect person for our organization. And we love that. But now VNHG, look at the environment. We're in a global pandemic. The economy is terrible. There's about 10.5 million jobs open in the US. The labor participation rate is its lowest level in a very long time. So things aren't looking so shiny and rosy out there right now. They'll be better someday. I've been involved in lots of business cycles. The business cycles like this is economics, and it's expected to be like this throughout our lives. Every 8 years or so, there's another business cycle. So we have rough times, we have good times. In good times, companies invest. They hire these entry-level people, and they dedicate a $200,000 employee to go teach and tutor the new employee. So the company might spend $60,000 to $100,000 on training fees just to train somebody new, just to get them to be prepared to work. So right now, the economy's not good. And when the economy's not good, companies lay off. And companies lay off the entry level, they lay off the people that have less skills, and they keep their strongest and their best. Because if the economy is bad and you can only afford a certain number of students, here's what you're going to have. You're going to only have the best, because it's been said that 20% of the people do 80% of an organization's work anyway. So working on these questions, working on making sure this is the case, the company only has senior people. So let's work on the assumption that the junior jobs are harder to get. VNHG, my first job was a senior network engineer. And I only applied for a network engineer, and I've never applied for an entry-level role. And don't worry about the entry-level role. Become better. Learn more about the network. Learn more about the data center. Pick a specialty like networking and become great at it, or security and become great at it. Focus on your business acumen. Focus on your executive presence. Focus on your communication skills. Focus on developing leadership. Focus on becoming an expert presenter. Focus on the gravitas development. You don't want to be this person that talks like this. You want to be a person that's powerful and seen as commanding when you walk in the room. You do this, you're not going to need an entry-level solutions architect job. You're going to get a regular one. I had a student with me. He was with me for 3 weeks, and his first job at AWS was in senior solution architect. So the point is, it's a matter of becoming great. Build extreme depth of knowledge. Build extreme competency. Build extreme emotional intelligence. Become likable. Work on that je ne sais quoi, that gravitas, that charm, the charisma. Develop that. When you go on an interview, you will get hired. Here's a secret, VNHG. When we hiring managers interview people, here's the thing. 50% of their score, of their interview candidate score, is technical competency. But you know what that other 50% is, VNHG? Attitude, emotional intelligence, likability, communication skills. So here's your secret. When you're brand new, it's impossible to become a 50 out of 50 on technical abilities. I get my students to about a 40 out of 50 on technical competency, which is huge and better than 90% of the population. But still, 40 out of 50 is as good as we're ever going to get. But if we can get to 50 out of 50 on the soft skills, the leadership, the emotional intelligence, executive presence, now VNHG, now we've got a candidate that's so likable, so likable, they just get hired and they get paid a lot more. So that's the way you do it. What you do is you go out there, you upgrade your skills, you become better than the rest, and you show the world how you can help them. And guess what? You'll get hired, and it won't be an entry-level job. It'll be a regular job. And go out there, get that great job. Go out there, go build your career and impress yourselves, your manager, your family. Watch your career escalate like a rocket, and go take good care of your family. Chris, if you want to bring in the next question, please. Mahadevi Sutar, will you please make videos available on YouTube on AWS projects that employs multiple services for freshers? So Mahadevi Sutar, I think you have to understand where our focus is. So as an organization, Go Cloud Architects, Go Cloud Careers, we build architecture careers. And when we build architecture careers, we're realistically speaking on the things that architects do. So what do architects do? Architects do systems design. So the key is, we teach our architecture and our systems design to our students, but the reason is we will never do anything that's just an AWS project because it's not reality, Mendevi. Reality is that 97% of all organizations that use the cloud are on multiple clouds. Now, a year ago, 29% of organizations were on a single cloud. But a year later, after COVID and after a business decision that was made by one of the cloud providers, 97% of all organizations using the cloud are on more than one cloud. So by doing things that are just AWS, I'm effectively creating videos that would teach people a skill on how to never get hired. So Mandevi, when I would create these things, if I create them on AWS and I tie them into Azure and I tie them into Google or OpenStack, that's something that's going to get somebody hired. And that's why if you look on our channel, you notice when we talk about object storage, we talk about it being the same as S3 on AWS, cloud storage on Google, as well as Blob on Microsoft. And when we talk about NFS, we do the things. And we talk about virtualizations and virtual machines, we always tie it back to an AWS EC2 instance or an Azure virtual machine or something from Google Compute Engine or an Oracle virtual machine. And here's the reason we do it. We are cloud architects. As cloud architects, we use every cloud. That's why you'll see videos on OpenStack. Who knows? Maybe we'll make you a video on Nutanix and we'll talk about every cloud, and some Azure stuff is coming up too. That's the reason why we do it. So we're not looking to give someone a skill that's just good for passing an exam. We want to give people a skill to get cloud hired. And because of that, we're dealing with multiple clouds. Now, you also have to understand our channel. We deal with architects. Architects are system designers. Cloud engineers are system builders. We architects don't configure, like ever. I've been an architect for 25 years. And when I shifted from engineer to architect 25 years ago, it was the last time I ever touched the command line, because we architects design and don't configure. So what do we design and how do we design, Mandar? We design based upon the technology that we need. So Mandevi, when it comes to learning to drive, you didn't learn how to drive a Honda and get special training for a Honda and then get special training for the Toyota and then special training for the Mercedes. You learned to drive a car. You learned how to use the steering wheel, the gear shifter, the accelerator, the brakes. These are the things that you learn. And by doing that, you can drive every car. So Mandevi, the reason I don't just make it AWS and I design it like the architecture, like the architects would, is that I know where I need a load balancer. And it doesn't matter to me if it's an Azure load balancer, an AWS Elastic load balancer, or a Google Cloud load balancer. I need a load balancer. All I need to do as an architect is determine whether it's a network load balancer or an application load balancer. Because no matter what they call it, those are your only two choices of load balancers. There's some flavor of a network load balancer and application load balancer. I need to know what size virtual machines I need, how many cores, how much DRAM, how much disk I/O performance. And guess what? It's the same requirements that I'm going to pick on any cloud providers. So sure, we can and will do some basics, just pure AWS things, but we try to leave that into our free boot camps. And that's why we did like an AWS Advanced Networking boot camp. And we did a free AWS Solution Architect Associate boot camp. The reason we do these free boot camps is that's where we do our AWS or our Azure or maybe our Cisco specific things. But in real life, when we make our videos, they're built on building careers. Certifications don't get someone hired. Only knowing one cloud and not multiple clouds isn't going to get someone hired. We need to get you guys cloud hired. And it is so important to us to get you guys cloud hired. Those are the reasons we do what we do. And that's why we're not just making them pure AWS. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't like doing things that are AWS only, because I love AWS, but that's why we don't just do AWS projects. We do cloud projects. So perhaps we'll come up with some more cloud projects across multiple cloud providers. It's a very good thing to show, and I love the idea. But that's why it probably won't be just AWS projects. It'll be multiple cloud projects, because we want to give you the real skills necessary to get hired, not the skills to pass an exam and then still look to get hired and go on the interviews and not have the skills to get hired. We want you all cloud hired. So that's the reason. So we do what we do, and our videos are structured this way. Because when it comes to being on the interview and somebody asks you how that technology works, I want to know you can explain it with excellence. because that's the only way the hiring manager is going to know your competency, is when you explain it to them. How well can you explain it? How well can they understand you? So that's the reason we do this. We are career focused, not certification focused. Chris, do you want to bring in the next question?
Yep, it's a two-parter, so I'm going to put both of them up back to back.
Sure. Sani, any book, program recommendations on leadership, business acumen, emotional intelligence, presentation, and communication skills? Sure. Is there a second half of that?
It's a second question, so separate question.
Okay, so Sani, I recommend our Cloud Architect Career Development Program because we focus heavily on leadership, business acumen, emotional intelligence, presentation skills, and communication skills in addition to this. And if you desire to be a cloud architect, that is going to be by far the best, fastest, and cheapest program. Now, having said that, there's lots of great training on leadership. I did an MBA. I had a reasonable amount of leadership training in that, but that costs about $100,000. Regarding business acumen, again, that's covered very well in an MBA. But what's not covered in an MBA program is training on how to become CXO relevant. I got to tell you, I paid about $10,000 for that, Sani, and I took several $1,000 business acumen classes on being CXO relevant. So you can do it, but that's getting pretty pricey on there if you're doing it outside of a program. But it will make a big difference. What do you need in business acumen? You need to learn micro and macroeconomics. You need to know ROI modeling, expected values of opportunities, some relatively good statistics to be able to understand statistics and read studies, and be able to quote studies and actually make your studies necessary to do things. So what else? You need to be able to look at a financial statement, understand top line revenue, understand EBITDA, understand, all these financial metrics. They're absolutely critical. Again, you could try and get some of that relatively easy. You could do some training on how to read a financial statement. So those kind of things are there. Now, some good project program management skills are kind of necessary to be there. Again, that's not the kind of hardest thing to get. But industry relevant knowledge under the business acumen, that's serious. So you're going to have to get some training or knowledge or somebody. You need somebody that knows real business and that's been a real executive that's presented or sold, $1 billion plus deals to teach this, because that's the kind of acumen you need for here. Now, emotional intelligence, I can help you here. We have a very heavy specific emotional intelligence course. If you are not with us, Goldman and a few others do it, and they have some very good training on it. But it's going to be at least $5,000 for the week, and there's no way around it. With regards to presentation skills, we have heavy presentation in our training. If you're not with us, Speak Easy in California does some good presentation skills. They've got an intro course called Talk So People Listen. It's about $3,000. I highly recommend it. It's a good intro course, and then do 2 or 3 courses beyond that if you're not with us. So that'll give you those presentation skills. Now, for communication skills, well, this is a few things. You're going to have to study the following. You have to be able to understand the personality types. So I recommend some behavioral science here. What really helps is a good knowledge of psychology and sociology and the neurobiology of what goes on. For example, if you understand the brain, that when we're here and we're relaxed, we're using our prefrontal cortex as the thinking, reasoning, fun part of our brain. And for example, if you get stressed, this good thinking part of the brain will shut down, and the amygdala, which is responsible for freeze, fight, or flight, will kick in. And that has implications on how we act. It has implications on our emotional intelligence. So we have to learn how to control those things too. So there's that. We have to work on an open-mindedness and non-judgmentalness. So Sani, I can tell you that you could take our course to do this. I personally, between Cisco funding and me funding, spent well over $250,000 to learn this. And if you try and do these things on your own, it will cost you a minimum of $25,000 to $50,000 to learn these skills. That's why I created this course, Sani, because these skills are so valuable. And these skills are so essential to going from the basic jobs to the really elite jobs, because it's kind of like that secret decoder ring, that special language that all the executives speak, and you've got to be part of it. And that's why I created this program, to create opportunity for everyone else to basically get that finishing school experience. So they had the je ne sais quoi, they had that gravitas, the executive presence, the leadership skills, to give other people like me the opportunity to go from beginning here and build a career like this, so you can have a wonderful, wonderful career. So those would be where I would come from. Goldman is really good on the emotional intelligence side. Leadership, there's lots of great leaders, But these are the training programs that I would recommend. And if you've got more questions there, Sandy, I'd happily describe them with you. And then, Chris, I think you said there was a second question. Sandy, also you sell software right now. Good. I was going from sales development rep to account exec. The best way to prepare a cloud architect job. Well, see, here's the thing. When you're sales, typically speaking, business development roles is one thing. When people go to an account executive role, that becomes much more direct sales. So I would say the architecture role is closer to a business development role than a direct sales role. Because typically speaking, even though we're all in sales or tied to sales, we typically don't get a quota like an account executive would be. We typically get a quota that's more tied to a team or a region or corporate performance. And it couldn't be a sales, could be a corporate package or a sales package, but it's typically tied towards corporate performance. So typically speaking, those development or those business development roles are typically bigger roles where you're interacting with lots more people. So there's a lot of that I would say is typically useful, probably more useful. In this particular case, Sandy, if you're in that position, I don't know what kind of sales and software sales you're selling. If you're dealing with sales that are $1 million or less, you're going to have to focus on that business acumen, leadership, executive presence kind of thing. Because when you're dealing with deals that are smaller, less than $1 million, the sales cycles are very different. If you're dealing with sales that are between $1 and $10 million, you're well on your way and you're in good shape. If you've been dealing with sales that are $50 million and above, and you know that process and you know that cycle, then you're going to be in extremely good shape. But the business development side of the sales is a little different, whether it's on the channel side or not. It requires a little less presence and a little less gravitas, because we're relying on these big channel partners to resell our stuff. Typically speaking, that's where business development roles are. And I don't exactly know your background, but I think going from sales to this is really, really great because you've got some of the business side of it. But the question is, what kind of sales? And, cloud sales is a pretty nice place to be too. And if you've got good sales skills, people could be a cloud architect for a while, and then they could move into cloud sales as well. And if you're like me, I kind of ride the line in between architect and account executive and leader. I'm really sort of at the edge of it. You can build your career by being more technical, or you can really build your career by being more businessy. And that's where the companies have the budget, and that's where the companies have the money. And that's where I choose to be. I choose to focus more on the leadership side because it gives you so much more career potential. So if you kind of hover in that cross place between the sales rep and the really strongly technical person and a good business leader, you're in great shape. Because, Sandy, people assume those of us that are in sales, for example, and I spent some of my time in sales, will do anything to sell, which is not strategic. Where we need to be strategic in our world as architects, because we can't sell anything that doesn't work. We have to be great at what we do. We have to be really caring about our customers. We have to be authentic, and our customers need to know we care. They just need to know we care. And a customer can feel you care. When a customer knows you care, they're there with you. So these are the kind of things. So it's kind of a cross, like I said, between the leadership, the sales, the engineering. It all goes together. So sales is a very good background, especially if you're doing consultative sales, where it starts with the requirements from the customer and you figure out how to improve their business, which is the best way to sell. And then after you do that, then you make a design, and then after that, then you're in these other kind of things. So sales is, generally speaking, a very good background. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Adam, is it possible to land a junior cloud job with a cloud practitioner certification, which is easier to get into entry-level DevOps or solution architects? Okay, so Adam Tesley, generally speaking, it takes the certified solution architect professional and then some for someone to get their first entry-level cloud job. Now, I'm going to tell you this. DevOps jobs are really going to be hard to get unless you are a software developer. So Adam Tesley, I think DevOps is a wonderful career, but here's the thing for DevOps. First and foremost, you need to be a software developer. And anybody that tells you that you can just get a DevOps job without knowing how to code because you just took a DevOps certification is lying to you. The AWS DevOps Pro will not get anybody hired that doesn't have a DevOps knowledge or DevOps capability. So for DevOps, first, you have to become a developer. Then you have to learn the DevOps tools, Jenkins, Spinnaker, and there's a whole bunch of them. And then after that, then you can get the certification. The AWS has a really nice DevOps professional, but you got to know it first. Now, for the solution architect job, if you, Adam, have like 10 to 20 years of data center and networking background, then sure, with that cloud practitioner, you are good to go, completely good to go. Generally speaking, it's almost impossible for someone to get a junior position with the AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate. But here's our advice. So Adam Tesley, I will tell you that we advise our students to skip the cloud practitioner. But don't worry, we're going to use the cloud practitioner to help you. The reason we advise our students to skip the cloud practitioner is as follows. Typically speaking, it takes the average person approximately 2 months to do the cloud practitioner. The average cloud architect earns $600 a day. A good one earns double that or triple that, but an average cloud architect earns about $600 a day, which means the average cloud architect earns about $12,000 a month. Since it takes the average person 2 months to become a cloud practitioner, and realistically speaking, the job opportunities there are very limited, and realistically speaking, the person will have to do further certification beyond that. We recommend people start directly with the AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate because it's probably 10% harder than the cloud practitioner, and it's still so fundamental. So that's our recommendation. Now, Adam Tesley, I'm going to tell you what we do. When we get students that have passed the AWS Cloud Practitioner, we tell them to go straight to the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional, to use that cloud practitioner as a Certified Solution Architect Associate replacement, and then to study for the Certified Solution Architect Professional. Like the game Monopoly, where they say don't stop and pass go straight to the Certified Solution Architect Professional. Now, make sure you learn the network, make sure you understand the data center stuff prior to that, otherwise that exam will be complicated. Learn that exam, master that exam, and then when you're done that, because Adam Tesley, again, the Certified Solution Architect Professional by itself still isn't enough. It's about 10% of what you need. But Adam Tesley, you can go out there and you can get these jobs, and they are great jobs. I just want you to understand one thing, Adam Tesley. These jobs are big, big, big jobs, and they pay a lot. So think of it this way. A cloud architect can earn between $80,000 and $400,000 plus per year. A good cloud architect with a few years experience will get $200,000 to $400,000 job offers 2 to 3 times per day, every day of the week, just by having the title cloud architect on a LinkedIn profile. So that's what's going to happen when you're good and when you've got some knowledge, and you will get it, Adam. I promise you, you will. Just the great things are coming for you, but don't expect someone to pay somebody $200,000 a year because they passed a Certified Solution Architect Professional exam. Basically speaking, when you're dealing with one of these professional exams, this is, I think, an Azure Expert book, and this is the Azure Expert plus this 2 books in one. This is it. So, when I became a CCIE, I had to read 75,000 pages of knowledge just to become a CCIE, and that's why CCIEs were getting paid a lot. Here's the thing, Adam Tesley, when you get yourself the business acumen, and you get yourself your communication skills, and when you get yourself this leadership skills, and when you work on your emotional intelligence, and you've got some depth of knowledge in the network and the data center, wow, Adam Tesley, the world is going to be coming for you, and they're going to search you and hunt you down because that skill set is so rare. So where you're at right now, not enough to go, but where you can go in the future is great. But remember, Adam Tesley, the knowledge of the network and the data center is more important than these certifications. And here's the thing. What do we cloud architects do? Really, what is our job? Well, first, our job is to transform the organization through technology. But 2, what are we doing from a practical perspective? We're taking the stuff, the servers, the containers, the firewalls, the VPN concentrators. We're taking all that from the data center, and we're popping it all into the cloud. And what is the cloud? It's somebody else's data center and network. That's it. So virtual machine in the data center gets migrated to a virtual machine in the cloud. Container in the data center gets migrated to a container in the cloud. Network file system storage in the data center gets migrated to network file system storage in the cloud. Maybe we call it EFS, but it's the same thing. So that's why all this knowledge of the network and the data center, Adam Tesley, build yourself your fundamentals, get yourself your business acumen, and build yourself a career like nothing else. I promise you, if you do these things, you will have such a good career, but it's that deep, 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 deep knowledge. When you get it and you're good, the world will come to you. So go out there, become great, and build the best career. And let us know how wonderful it is when you get that great job, because you'll get something really fantastic. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one.
So follow up to a previous series of questions.
But what is a good requirement? How do we find good business requirements instead of one-liner? I'm not completely sure I understand your question, but I'm going to work.
You were talking about business, gathering information and requirements from the business and the
I was, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm still not really sure. So Plenum, I think the question becomes is you've got to know enough about business before you can do these architecture roles. So, and I'll explain it because, and these architecture roles, Poonam, are really, really wonderful. And that's why I'm thrilled you're asking these questions, because I want you to have something fantastic. So let's look at it. What is a business about? Realistically speaking, that's the key question. Now, if you're dealing with a publicly traded company, meaning something that's traded on a stock exchange, the CEO's job and legal responsibility is to increase shareholder value. That means raise the stock price or make sure the people that own the stock become more wealthy. That is the CEO's official and legal job. And you know what, Poonam? If the CEO acts in a manner that's not designed to enrich the shareholders in a publicly traded company, not only can they be fired, they can literally be put in prison. So that's how regulated these environments are. If the CEO were to act in the best interest of the employees, for example, as opposed to the shareholders, the CEO could be put in prison. So now that you know that, how does the CEO make the stock price go up? Well, the following ways. First, if the company's revenues go up, meaning total sales, stock price goes up. If by comparison, the revenue stays the same, but expenses go down, profitability or income goes up. Again, that raises the stock price. If the organization's growing very rapidly, the stock price will go up. If the organization has exciting news to tell the industry, and it says, we've developed the newest computer chip, people have belief that the company is going to do well, they will pour their money into that company's stock, and it will raise something called the price to earnings multiple, meaning people will be willing to pay more based upon the willingness of future earnings. So if earnings are $1 today, right, and the news is average, maybe the company's worth $30 per share. But for example, if the news is exciting and the earnings are currently $1 per share, it might be worth $200 per share. So they can play with the price to earnings multiple based upon excitement in the industry and great news in the industry. And Poonam, of course, if I'm the CEO and I have 1 million shareholders and I give all my shareholders money in the form of a dividend, again, this is still going to be boosting careers, and because of this, we love this. So that's how you boost stock price. So now that you know the levers that the CEO has and the goals that the CEO has and legally required to have in a big company, and who's going to be hiring cloud architects as a rule and paying them a lot, typically speaking, big publicly traded companies. So now, what can we do? For one, how do we increase sales? Is a new website the kind of thing? Is there some kind of digital marketing thing we can assist our customer with? Is there a place where we can aggregate customer desires and find out what the customers want and let them design a new product? Is there some kind of social media thing we can do? Is there some kind of cool broadcast that we can do that leverages technology? These are the kind of things we have to start. So the first thing we have to find is what is the business's goal? Maybe the business has been hacked and their main goal is we've got to lock systems down because we've got brand damage. Maybe an organization has a competitor and the competitor's eating their lunch and they're doing their business better, faster, and cheaper. And now, for example, the company has to do something better. So how do we do that? So how do we do whatever's necessary to improve the business's performance? That's what we do. That's all related to that. So how do you define good business requirements? You have to know enough about business. So a couple of things that I could recommend. Obviously, a training program like ours would help you. Now, reading certain publications such as The Economist, will typically enhance your knowledge of business and overall global economic things that are going on, and it's necessary. Reading things like the Wall Street Journal or the Financial Times out of England will increase your levels of business acumen. So you read these things every single day and it becomes part of it. So do publications such as Business Week. And if you read enough things and you're reading CIO magazine and you're interacting with enough CEOs, you're going to know. So that would be a place to start on your own, is literally speaking, start reading those common business publications, watch business news. There's lots of business news stations, whether they be Bloomberg or CNBC. I think Fox has a business channel. Somebody else probably has a business channel. Watch some of the business channels and watch them all, not just one. Watch them all, because they're all funded and have different sets of sponsors that all think differently. And when you really want to really know business, you need all the perspectives, because each perspective probably has some validity. So get it all. Watch the business news, read these journal articles from lots of different sources, and then you average it out in your head. And then after you've seen everything from a wide variety of sources, that's when your research is done. So that's generally what I would do. And then that's how you're going to define the business requirements, because you have to know enough about the business first. So learn those business fundamentals. And then all you have to do is ask, could you please tell me what's going on with your business? What's working? What's not working? What are your goals? If you just do that and literally listen, you will obtain so much information. And Poonam, after the person says, what we really need to do is increase sales. We've been able to grow 2% year over year, but I need to grow at 7% to keep the shareholders happy. Repeat it back to the person. I want to make sure I understand this. You've achieved the 2% year over year growth. Your stock has been punished, and what you need to do to get the stock price to grow along with your business is to raise your revenue by 7%. Is that correct? And if they say yes, you got it. If they say no, do something different. So Poonam, that's what I would do. Start with open-ended questions and ask them. Open-ended questions will give you the answers you desire. Chris, if you want to bring in the next question. Ricardo, do you use the application that is on the AWS architecture? Okay, so I believe you download the AWS architecture application on PowerPoint, and then you use the arrows and icons to draw the... So Ricardo, I don't use anything like this and have never used anything like this, and I don't know anybody that has used anything like this. So Ricardo, here's the thing. There's no such thing as an architecture that's just a picture. Never. An architecture design is going to have pictures and documents and explanations of how it works. Ricardo, it's very common to have a 300-page architecture document. It's also common to have a 10-page architecture document and a 2-page one for the executives. So realistically speaking, there's lots of tools out there. There's a draw.io, Microsoft Visio is what we all used for years. Lucidchart is another thing. So typically speaking, people draw their own things in a commercial package that works with AWS and Cisco and Azure and Google standards, industry standard stuff that people use. And some of these tools are free and the rest of them are cheap. And then they're going to be using these diagrams along with Microsoft Word or Google Documents and the creation of long documents that are going to explain how the systems actually work. So no, nobody's really using these tools. And it's like anything else. Think about the actual environment. There's a certain set of tools that we all use. And by using a certain set of tools that we all use, if I'm on Google or Azure or Oracle or Palo Alto or the Dell Cloud or the Cisco Cloud, it's irrelevant. It's all the same. So don't bog yourself down and worry about AWS tools. Learn industry tools. It's kind of like CloudFormation for your DevOps engineers. Who would use CloudFormation when it's only good on AWS, when you could use Terraform and deploy your code, your infrastructure on AWS, Azure, and Google all at the same time? I mean, that's magical. Learn a tool, learn everything that's using it for everyone. So to present your ideas, you're going to do the following. You're going to draw it up in one of these graphics packages. Then you're going to use PowerPoint and you're going to design it yourself. You're going to manually tune it. It's really good. Now, Ricardo, if it's a big environment and a big design, you may actually be doing what I would do. You design it in PowerPoint. You may actually send it to a professional graphics team. And your graphics team may be using Adobe InDesign to make it look really good and classy. And I've used it all the time. So the point is if it's important enough, you're going to make it look extra good. You may even use some graphics professionals, and they will be using tools that are way, way, way outside of these AWS tools. So to present our ideas, basically think Google Slides or PowerPoint. To draw it up, basically think one of the industrial packages such as Lucidchart or Visio or Draw.io. That's what we're all using. And then Microsoft Word or Google Sheets to explain it. So yeah, those are the things we're going to be using. The same tools that we've all used for the last 30 or 40 years prior to AWS. AWS is an incredibly great cloud. Love the cloud. Lots of great services in every single way, but I'm going to use the bigger tools and recommend them to my organizations for the same reason, and they're going to be using for the same reason. Vendor neutral. Nobody likes to be locked in and held handcuffed prisoner. It's like handcuff me. I'm only using one person's tools, and if it doesn't work, I have no ability to get off. So I don't like that. So I use standard tools, and I don't use any vendor's tools other than industry standard things for everything. Open source, open standard. Systems scale much better that way. If you guys have some more questions, please bring them in. We love answering questions. That's why we're here. So hit the like button if you haven't been here. Subscribe if you're new to our channel. Hit the bell notification so that you know when we do free stuff, like the subnetting webinar, which we're going to do today. You'll be informed of them. But in the meantime, please let us know, like, and hit the bell, that kind of thing. I'm learning how to be a YouTuber. Chris, if you want to bring up the next question.
Hey, Mr. YouTube newbie, what do we have going on Monday?
Okay, on Monday, everyone. So that's the voice of my chief operating officer. On Monday, we have a completely free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. And it's going to be on Zoom as well as YouTube. And you can come in, you can ask your questions. We'll tell you everything about how to get your first job, tech job. We'll tell you what hiring managers want. We'll tell you how to leverage your past experience. We'll tell you how to get past HR. We'll tell you how to get your resume directly in the hands of the hiring manager. We'll tell you how to get hired. And we'll give you the opportunity to ask us questions live via voice for at least an hour. And it's going to be a great experience. And it's coming on next Monday at 9 a.m. Eastern, which is 2 p.m. UK time, which I believe is 7:30 IST time, because I don't believe there's, because of the daylight savings time piece. So come and join us. It'll be lots and lots of fun. I got lots of great feedback. I've got so many students that come back and they say, oh my God, this helped me so much. So please join us, and it's completely fun. Oh, and today we're doing a Subnet Workshop at 1 p.m. So please join us. Sebastian Chara, hey Mike, is a degree in anything necessary, or is competency based purely on knowledge and experience? Well, there's two sides of this, Sebastian. A degree helps. I will tell you that in my experience, maybe there's 10 to 20% of the organizations that require a degree, and about 80% of the organizations are out there looking for someone competent. So Sebastian, I want to make this clear. You can interview 5,000 AWS certified and not find a single competent person. It is that hard to find competent. And if a hiring manager finds competent, they may not even let you leave the room without giving you a job offer. And I'm going to say this, I've been interviewed on 5 jobs in my life, and I've been hired by all 5. And 2 of the 5, I had an offer before I even left the room. So it's competency. Now, Sebastian, I'm going to tell you, I've got lots of degrees, but none of them are in tech. In fact, my first degree is in nursing. I was a nurse practitioner, so I was an EMT, paramedic, RN, and then nurse practitioner. I had my own internal medicine office. And my second degree is in business. And, initially it was a little bit off, but I went past it. I've got students that get hired every day as cloud architects and solution architects without college degrees. So a college degree is helpful. Some organizations mandated it, but it is definitely not required. But what is required is as follows: competency beyond belief. And if you don't have the degree, you have to be 10 or 20% better than those who do, because you're losing something on the point side. Guess what? Be better. It's not that much harder to be better than the average, and you'll be better. And anyway, so there's that. Next, your emotional intelligence is the biggest predictor of your long-term career success. As an architect, where you're leading a team of people that don't work for you, and you're going to be dealing with executives, and you're going to be consulting, and you're going to walk into people's organizations that have made huge mistakes, you're going to have to go in there and smoothly and ask about the things and go fix it. For those kind of things, your emotional intelligence needs to be there. Now, your interview skills, if you don't have a degree, have to be even better because you've got to win over the hiring manager when you've got less to offer on paper. Now, if you've got less to offer on paper, even if you have the same to offer in terms of quality, make sure your quality is better. So present yourself really well. Make sure that your knowledge of business is good. Make sure you've got that as executive communication skills. Make sure that you know the difference between a functional personality type versus an intuitive personality type versus an analytical, because you got to speak differently to all of us. I'm an intuitive leader, but these things matter. Understand how to deal with visual, auditory, and kinesthetic types. And if you don't know what I mean, take some kind of training like ours or learn some neuro-linguistic programming. And while 80% of neuro-linguistic programming I would toss out, the visual, auditory, kinesthetic piece is really essential, and there's lessons to be learned there. So then learn your economics, learn your finance, learn your networking, learn your data center, learn your sales skills. If you've got those great skills, Sebastian, it really doesn't matter whether you've got a degree or not. It matters that you've got all the things that people love. When you have all the characteristics of someone great in your field, you're going to get hired. So competency is based upon knowledge, not experience. Experience is not a good measure of competency. There are people that like to use experience as competency, but those of us that have been in the field for a long time, we look at it as a joke. HR, human resources, are not technology professionals, so they often look at experience as competency. We hiring managers look at competency and competency. So here's the thing. A 14-year-old that can break into the Pentagon because they can hack in is a really good security person. A 50-year-old or a 48-year-old like me that didn't know security but's been working in security forever can't compete with that 14-year-old competency. Now, I've worked in security for a while and I know a lot about security, but my point is what I was trying to say. 25 years of experience doesn't mean someone's good at anything. They'd be horrible after 25 years. In medicine, I know doctors that are 80 years old that were bad for the last 50 years. And I know doctors with 6 months experience that are amazing. So competency and experience are two different things. They can be related. They're often related, but they're not necessarily related. So hope I answered your question there. If you guys have more questions, please bring in your questions. We love answering them. Hit that bell, hit the subscribe button. Let us know we're doing a good job because we love working with you guys. And Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Sani, what organizations have you found to be the most financially rewarding for you as a cloud architect? For example, banking, healthcare, cloud providers. So Sani, I will say this. Healthcare, as a rule, is going to be the lowest paying of any possible industry. So I would say that's going to be the least rewarding. Now, if you're me, Sani, and you can practice medicine, then healthcare is going to be a great place for you. And here is the reason. When you're like me, if you've got an extreme set of technical and business skills, it's going to make you stand out. So if I can practice medicine and I've been a healthcare executive and I've been an enterprise architect, cloud architect, every other kind of architect you can think of, I stick out like a sore thumb in healthcare because there's not a lot of Cisco certified internet experts plus people that can practice medicine. So for me, I do well in healthcare. But Sani, I'm going to tell you, I worked in banking and that pays a whole heck of a lot more. And generally speaking, you're going to earn most in the banking industry. So what determines how much you'll be paid, Sani, is going to be the following. First and foremost, when you look through the statistics and the history, your soft skills have a bigger impact on your salary than anything else. On average, raising someone's soft skills in the technology world equates to a 33% raise. Now, on average, emotional intelligence training raises someone's salary about $30,000 a year. So by focusing on those two skills alone, for the average person, you're dealing with about $2.5 million of, of additional bonuses that you can actually place on their salary over the course of 30 years. Now, I'm going to tell you this, Sani, if you're really emotionally intelligent and you've got great business acumen and great presentation skills and great sales skills, you will earn triple the average cloud architect that just focuses on the technology piece. So the industry matters, but what matters most is you and your skill set. The more technical you are, as a rule, the lower your salary will be. The more business, the more leadership, the more emotionally intelligent, the more gravitas you have, as a rule, the higher your salary will be. Now, having said all of that, some banks, for example, a couple of years ago, Goldman Sachs had an average bonus of $600,000 a year. So those network architects, those cloud architects, those enterprise architects had a several $100,000 year base pay and ended up all getting on average a $600,000 year bonus. So you got to look at what's going on in the industry. And that was about 10 years ago. So the point is all these organizations that are financially successful can pay, but they're all different. So Sandy, the big banks pay big bonuses and everybody has an average base salary. Tech companies, you join them, many of them, especially if they're smaller providers, could give you 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000, 200,000 shares, or options at least, and sometimes shares. And if those shares go up, that could be millions and millions of dollars, especially when you start with boutique startup cloud firms. And a lot of them are really good places. And a lot of my friends and peers have gone there for those reasons because they like doing these gambles on startups. So startups can be good. Now, the big tech companies like the Ciscos of the world and the Dells and the Palo Altos and the Googles and the AWSs, they have big budget too, and they can afford to pay very well. So they also pay well. But who else can? A global retailer. So Sandy, you know what's really going to make that determination? How critical the organization's technology is to the business. So for a business that can't live without its tech, those tech people are the main people. For a business that basically doesn't rely heavily on tech like healthcare, it becomes less critical and they're paid less. Now, healthcare is using a lot of tech now and it matters, but the point is certain things. So now, Sandy, think about tech being a competitive differentiator. And I want you to go think about banking. And I want you to think like an architect, not an engineer right now. So let's be the architects. So let's say a bank is doing this following. They're buying a stock and selling a stock. They're trading stocks all day long. Buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell. Now, let's say, Sandy, the organization's got an application, and this application itself basically gets financial feeds, then looks at news feeds instantly, looks at what's happened historically based upon news feeds, and this thing can buy and sell a stock faster than anybody else, Sandy. Now, let's say lots of banks have applications that buy and sell stocks on a predicted basis. Now, Sandy, when you buy something on an auction, and the stock is an auction, if everybody buys at the same time, the price goes up. If everybody sells at the same time, the price goes down. So now, Sandy, imagine building a trading platform for an organization that processes 10 billion trades a day or 4 billion trades a day. And if that organization can buy it faster than the competitors, and they can make an eighth of a dollar on just buying it faster per share, and they buy 10 million shares, and then 5 minutes later, they sell those 10 million shares faster than everybody else and get out another eighth of a dollar. That's $20 million they made just by their systems being faster than somebody else's systems. And imagine this happening thousands of times per day because the systems are faster. So Sandy, in an organization like that, a cloud architect can make billions of dollars for the companies by making their systems a little better. And when you could do that, Sandy, the companies will pay you anything. They don't even care because you're solving their problem. You're a revenue source. So the key is it's based upon the transformation. When people ask, how do I sell something that's expensive? I say, I don't sell anything. I've never have. I say, I show the customer the systems they have. I show them where they're at revenue-wise. I show them what other customers have done in similar situations and what percentage of revenue growth they've been able to achieve by following strategies that are similar to this. And then I take a percentage of that and say, we expect a 50% likelihood of this outcome for you because we like to underestimate it. And as you can see, this $1 billion solution is going to generate $4 billion of revenue for you, conservatively speaking. And then the customer buys it. And then when they get $8 billion of revenue, they're like, woohoo, we love this because you under-promise, over-deliver, and make your systems work. So who pays the most? Whoever is the most reliant on technology. The bigger the problem, the more the pay. So just try and keep that in mind. Jonathan Brown. So it's best to familiarize yourself with generic things, generic cloud, generic tools, generic design. Jonathan Brown, yes, but I want to make it really clear. It's not necessarily we're talking about generic. So I want you to get it this way. A switch is a switch. Now, if a switch says Cisco on it, if a switch says Juniper Networks on it, here's the thing. Switches basically forward based upon MAC addresses. Switches all have a loop avoidance protocol called spanning tree, at least all intelligent switches. Switches basically do VLAN, switches do trunking. And I just happen to have one sitting by my head, by my desk. I've got one of these Meraki switches. And if I use one of these Meraki switches and I create a trunk port and a .1Q trunk, and I run a .1Q trunk to a Juniper switch, guess what? It's going to work because I'm using an industry standard thing. So our point and our premise is that when you design using open standards, you're not locked in. So for example, there used to be a routing protocol called EIGRP, and it was a great routing protocol, but it only worked on Cisco routers. Now, if you had an entire network that was only Cisco, this is brilliant. But what if you had a network that included some devices from everybody else? Nothing would work. And in order to make it work, you would have to make some architectural design considerations and things like route redistribution and all kinds of things that would ultimately break things. So what happened is people would get locked into a single supplier. And then what happened is the organization started to go open source and say, hey, instead of using EIGRP, let's use OSPF, and it works on everybody, for example. And let's use more standard protocols like BGP that work for everybody. And in the process, networks can grow bigger and faster, and they can get better, faster, and cheaper because we can use whatever we need to use. Now, having said that, using a Cisco end-to-end solution might actually be the best in a lot of ways because, all the pieces of parts are kind of guaranteed to work together. But that doesn't mean you still shouldn't use a standards protocol, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't bring in other vendors because you don't want to be locked into anyone. So as part of the architectural design, there's that. But Jonathan Brown, that's not the reason. It's just not practical to learn it any other way. So let's really talk about why. If I need a server in the data center in today's world is going to be a virtual machine. A server in AWS is a virtual machine. A server in Azure is a virtual machine. A server in every cloud is a virtual machine. So realistically speaking, because everything is the same technology, if you actually know what the technology is, you'll be in a position to design it. If you don't understand the underlying technology, you can't design it. Let's say I wanted to make some chicken souvlaki. I'm Greek, I like to make souvlaki. If I didn't know what chicken is, and I didn't know what olive oil was, and I didn't know what salt, pepper, oregano, and lemon was, I could not make souvlaki. So I have to know that. So instead of learning Elastic souvlaki service, for example, I want you to know that the souvlaki is chicken, salt, pepper, oregano, olive oil, and lemon juice. So you can actually make a souvlaki. And that way, it doesn't matter which restaurant you go to, which kitchen, you can always make the souvlaki. So when you learn what a load balancer is, it doesn't matter if it's called Cloud Load Balancer, Azure Load Balancer, or Elastic Load Balancer. You know that it's a load balancer. And then you can work on every cloud. So, Jonathan, for those of you that speak multiple languages like I do, if I tried to have a thought and say, okay, I'm going to go to Grace. Okay, this thing is a phone. And then I went in my head and said, okay, what's the word for phone? What's the word for phone? What's the word for phone? Oh, wait, kinito. And then I went to translate, phone to kinito. And people were talking to me and they said a sentence and I had to translate the whole sentence back before I could even think about it. We're not having a conversation. But when I pick this up, I think of it as a kinito. And because I think of it as a kinito, because it's the same thing, I think in the actual language. I think in terms of architecture. I think where my subnets are going to be. I think where my routers are going to be. I think, where my servers are going to be. I think in terms of where my load balancers are going to be. I think in terms of where my firewalls are going to be. I think about the end-to-end picture. And I always think in terms of the tech, because the tech drives the service. The business needs require the service. Just because AWS makes a cool service, and they've got a lot of really great services, doesn't mean they're right for me. So there's that. So Jonathan Brown, I want you to think about architecture from another perspective. In cloud, people seem to get it confused and in their head, they make it complicated. So Jonathan, look at it this way. Let's say now I just switched from cloud architect to building architect. I'm going to design a building that needs to be 1,000 meters tall. Big, tall building. Because the building's going to be tall, there's wind, right? And the wind's going to blow me around. If the building's 1,000 meters tall, it's going to be really heavy. I mean, maybe 1,000 metric tons, maybe 10,000 metric tons, maybe 1,000,000 metric tons. And, it could sink into the ground if the ground's not dense enough. These are the questions. So the building architect thinks, okay, How dense does the ground need to be? 1,000 meters tall, what building materials do I need? Do I need steel? Okay. What strength is the steel? Do I need glass? Okay. The architect designs the structure and the appearance. And then the building architect will consult a structural engineer to make sure it's going to work. Just like we cloud architects will consult some cloud engineers to make sure that they think the technical piece that we design are going to work, because we're end-to-end designers. They're more technical. We're more business than we are. We're more business. They're more technical, but we've got to have the both. So then exactly, it's like exactly like you said. So now the building architect says, I need a brick. I don't care if you go to Lowe's. I don't care if you go to Home Depot. I don't care whose brand it is. I need to know. So by Jonathan Brown, exactly. It's like a light switch, like a light bulb. If you buy a GE light bulb or a Philips light bulb, it's just a light bulb. And that's the same thing with the cloud providers. If you truly know the cloud and you learn it from a generic perspective and you design your architecture, you design a virtual machine. And then you go to the store. You go to the AWS store, the Azure store, the Google store, the Oracle store, and you're always good to go. Here's the thing. Only 3% of all cloud organizations use a single cloud, and the other 97% use multiple clouds. So if you want to work with multiple clouds, you have to know the cloud technology, not the name of the service or how to configure it. Chris, if you want to bring in the next question. Krishna Rago. AWS CDK is more prominent than CloudFormation or Terraform. So regardless of the infrastructure background, one should learn and work on the cloud development kit. I would only learn Terraform for the average person, because Terraform is going to work across multiple clouds. And I focus my career on the things that are going to be needed long term. So personally for me, if I was an engineer, and I'm not an engineer, I'm an architect. And since architects don't code or deal with any of these kits, it's not an issue for me. But if I was in that DevOps world or I was in that automation world, I'd be focusing on Terraform these days, because it's there for everywhere. And when I speak to recruiters every day for the cloud engineers and the DevOps people, they're screaming for Terraform. And I have yet to see a recruiter ask me for someone with CDK. Now, I'm not going to say that CDK isn't important, and I'm not going to say that it's not widely used, because it is. But the recruiters and the hiring managers that speak to every day are saying, I want Terraform. I don't like this concept of being locked in, and I want stuff that's going to work everywhere. So that's what we're hearing every single day from our clients, and our clients include the people that hire people. So I would say learn Terraform, but that's just me. But we are in the architecture world, and these questions are more in the engineering and DevOps world. Having said all of that, we strongly, strongly, strongly recommend the focus being on Terraform or vendor neutral things. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Sarah Smith. There seem to be more engineer roles available versus architect. Absolutely. Why might this be? Trying to determine where to focus your efforts and your chance for success. New to cloud with more sales service background. So, Sarah, I want you to understand this. There's always more workers than leaders. So when you play the game of chess, for example, there's a lot of pawns and there's only one king and there's only one queen. So realistically speaking, you're always going to have more worker jobs than you actually are going to have leadership jobs. Now, both of these jobs are great. It's about what makes you happy. So the engineering job is going to be a very deeply technical job. And we're probably going to need 4 engineers per architect. And the reason is we architects design, and the engineers are the builders. They're the construction crew, Sarah. So, of course, you need less managers in an organization than you need employees, because the manager's job is to manage 4 to 5 people, for example, and make sure those 4 to 5 people do a good job. They get their development plans go through, the company does well. So these are the things that we're talking about, Sarah. So of course you're going to have more architect roles than engineering roles. Now, where you should focus your career? Well, your engineering roles earn $80,000 to $150,000 job, kind of max. Your architect jobs can start at like $150,000 and work your way all the way to $400,000 or more. Your architect jobs, kind of a direct path to these enterprise architect jobs, director jobs, VP jobs, et cetera, CTO jobs. Your engineering jobs kind of die. And the closest thing, once you're in the engineering world, once you reach a certain level, the only thing you can do is manage engineers. Now, again, this is still great, but it determines where you want to be. So if you want to move into these bigger roles with much more career potential, much more leadership, you should focus your time on architecture. If you love being technical, and there are people that really love being technical, these great technical people, they should focus their time on engineering. It's not a matter of which has more jobs. There are so many jobs as a cloud architect that you, literally speaking, if you're a competent person, and maybe you are, maybe you're not, I don't know your level of skill, but as a competent person, you could literally post something on LinkedIn that says, I'm looking for a new role as a cloud architect. I've got 20 years experience, or I've got this a number of capabilities. I've assisted clients saving XYZ amount of money. How can I help you? And I'm not suggesting doing that. Something like that would probably yield upwards of 15 to 20 interviews over the course of 3 hours if it was done right with hashtags. That's how huge the demand is for architects. Like I said, 4 recruiters or 5 recruiters reach out to me with a job offer every single day, and they're never less than $300,000 a year, ever. And that's because there's such a massive shortage of qualified architects. So there are more jobs than you can possibly imagine in cloud engineering and cloud architecture. Granted, there will always be more jobs for the worker than there will be for the leader. The cloud architect is much more of a leader than the cloud engineer, and because of that, there'll be less jobs, but they will pay much more, and they will have a rocket ship-like career progression. In the architect and the engineering roles are typically very stagnant. And even when you have these engineering roles, Sarah Smith, often to move up in the ranks, you actually have to pretend to be less technical and start focusing on more on the business acumen, the leadership, the emotional intelligence. That's what I did. That's how I came out of engineering into architecture. I actually pretended to be less technical. I changed the way I communicated, dressed, spoke, wrote, everything changed. And all of a sudden I was an architect. So, it's a matter of these things. It's a matter of building your brand. You're going to be successful in either one. It doesn't matter. It matters as long as you're good at it, but you've got to be really good at it. That's the key to getting your first job. When we interview people, and trust me, I interview a lot of people, it's very hard to find someone competent. And in the rare event we finally can find someone that's competent, we hire them, and we hire them fast. So I don't think you're going to have any problem getting any kind of job. I don't really think it matters. I think the key is just making sure what you do is exactly what you need to do and become great. I mean, truly, truly, truly great at whatever it is that you want to do. Just master it. Focus on the tech, but also focus on those other skills, and you'll be in great, great, great shape. Dorian Wright, what are the junior entry cloud roles for a beginner? Dorian Wright, I'm going to try and make this clear. As a rule, there's not much junior anything right now, but don't worry. We'll help you get something that's less junior and something that's more senior, and you're going to be doing great. Dorian, I want you to understand the problem. I want you to look at macro and microeconomic factors of things that are going on. What happens when a company hires a junior person? I'm a company, I hire a junior person. I know that when I hire a junior person, they don't know how to do the job. I probably won't know how to do the job for 6 months to a year. And that's okay. So Dorian, we hire someone that's junior, and then we train them. We dedicate a third or a half of a full-time resource, a $200,000-$300,000 resource, to teaching that new junior entry-level person. And those two work side by side for a while. And after about 6 months to a year, that new junior person is able to actually do the job, and we're all kinds of excited. Here's the problem, Dorian. Right now, kind of having economic challenges. We've got a relatively substantial level of unemployment. When we look at the number of jobs that are unfilled, there's about 10.5 million jobs that are unfilled in the US, and the labor participation rate is one of the lowest it's been. Here's what labor participation rate means: the actual percentage of the workforce that is actually working. So for example, if someone's actually searching for a job and they give up searching for a job, they're no longer counted as unemployed. They're just part of that lower labor participation rate. So when we look globally and see what's going on with global economies, mostly spurred by COVID and global supply chain issues, we see a lot of challenges going on. So because of these challenges going on, Dorian, what organizations are doing is they've been laying off people in the last year, or they've been letting people quit. Part of the Great Resignation, call it attrition and organizations are losing some people and they're becoming much more efficient. They're getting rid of some of those people, and they have been for the last year. So what the companies are holding on to right now, Dorian, and I'm going to help you get to your goals, don't worry. What they're holding on to now is the senior people, the most expensive people, but the senior people they know that can do the job. Someone that doesn't need to be watched. Someone that if you're going to run a skeleton crew, and you make sure those people that are there are your best and your brightest. So that's realistically speaking what's going on right now. And that's why it's more challenging. The economy is not so great. And because the economy is weaker, what's going on is organizations are holding on to the best. Organizations don't have the time to train someone. They don't have enough time to do the job. They're operating on these 20-80 principle. 20% of the employees do 80% of the work. So those 20% of the employees are working really, really, really hard right now, as others are leaving and things. So that's why there's no room right now for entry-level junior roles. Now, Dorian, don't worry about it. Here's the thing. When I took my first tech job, again, it was another economic challenge. And in this economic challenge, when I took my first tech job, guess what? There were no junior or entry-level roles either, and it doesn't matter. What did I do? I became better. So, Dorian, don't strive for an entry-level role. Don't look for a junior role. Become great, Dorian. Get really good at whatever you desire. You want to be a cloud engineer? Be a cloud engineer. You want to be a cloud architect? Be a cloud architect. It doesn't matter. Pick it. Know exactly what you want. Then, Dorian, I need you to take a laser focus, 100% of your effort dedicated towards one thing. So if you're an architect, Dorian, I want you to focus on architecture things. Architecture things include system design, design of the network, design of the data center, design of the cloud. And I need you to become an expert on routing, switching, firewalls, IDS, IPS system, storage, virtual machines, container-based technologies, security-based technologies, packet filtering, NAT, and all those network and data center technologies. Then, for example, Dorian, I need to become an expert on system design. Then I need to learn ROI modeling and emotional intelligence, executive presence, CXO relevancy, executive presentation skills, executive communication skills. And then, Dorian, I need you to become an expert at system design and really focus on all those things. And when you're that as an expert, you become an architect and a very hireable architect. But note, I talked about system design and I talked about network things. I talked about data center things. I talked about firewalls, VPN concentrators. I talked about all kinds of storage. I talked about identification and access management, Active Directory. We're talking about all these technologies. I need you to know that, for example, that. You know what I don't need you to know? I don't need you to know scripting. I don't need you to know programming. I don't need you to know Python. I don't need you to know Terraform. I don't need you to know DevOps, and I don't need you to know SysOps because it's somebody else's career. So Dorian, where people get struggle and where people have problems and they try to do these entry-level careers is they do junior level everything. And they get a little junior level knowledge on SysOps, which is the maintenance people of tech, and a little knowledge on DevOps, which is a great automation part of tech, and a little knowledge on cloud engineering, and a little knowledge on this. And then what happens is people apply for a job and they don't know anything because they got a little bit of knowledge in a lot of things where we need a lot of knowledge in one area. So my advice for you is to focus on whatever it is you like. If it's DevOps, great. If it's cloud engineering, great. If it's cloud architecture, great. Go work on being so great. And that's why we have a program like our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, because by the time people graduate our programs, they don't get junior jobs, they get senior jobs. Or regular jobs. My students don't get junior jobs. The only student that I think I had that ever got a junior job was as follows. I had one student, Richard, and he was an amazing, amazing, amazing guy. And he joined my program, and he was in my program for 3 weeks, and he took a technical account manager job at AWS. And that was the closest to a junior level person that I've had in as long as I can remember. And I don't consider that junior. He's got a great job for a great cloud organization, but I'm saying that is typically a little bit less than the architects that we typically so. Okay, so the second half of your question is you want to become a cloud architect, but you're starting from scratch. You need to know the best path to be confident in your journey. Okay, well, I'll tell you the easiest way and cheapest way, and then I'll tell you both ways. The easiest and cheapest way is to take our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. If you've got no background, it's going to be 500 hours long and it's going to take you 8 months. And the reason it's going to take you 8 months and be 500 hours long is as follows. We need to get you competent. And I'll tell you how we train competency. We train competency twice per week by doing a live architectural class. So twice per week on Zoom, we have live architectural training where we design systems that'll have 20,000 remote locations, 100,000 servers, 50,000 subnets, complicated BGP routing, complicated web environments, complicated data environments, complicated storage environments, complicated remote access environments. So, these are the kind of things that we do every class, and we do this twice per week. What do we do in between those classes? We do the following, and then I'll tell you what content that we talk about. So if you're with us, great. If you're not with us, great. But I'll tell you how to do it with us, and we'll be about 25 times cheaper doing it with us. But I'll tell you both ways. So then when you're done that, what do? We have our students do a combination of video training. It's training in the cloud. It's training on what makes the cloud possible. We do a lot of AWS training in addition to the tech training because it's the primary cloud provider. We do ROI modeling training, interview training, negotiation training, presentation training, emotional intelligence training, business acumen training, and literally speaking, all of it. And then for us, Dorian, we have an experience module because your organizations care that you have experience. They're going to ask, have you done this? Now, as architects, we don't configure, but it's still people are going to want to know that you've done it. Now, I got to tell you, when people do AWS labs, hey, I set up a WordPress site, and you try and tell that to an employer, the employer's like, okay, my 8-year-old could do that too. So that's not getting anybody hard. And the reason I say my 8-year-old can do that too is I took my friend's beautiful little daughter and I trained her how to set up a web server on an EC2 instance, and I trained her how to set up an S3 bucket in less than 5 minutes, and she did it by herself. And she clicked, and she said, EC2. Well, here's the thing, Dorian. Nobody pays anybody $300,000 a year to basically click 3 boxes when an 8-year-old could do it. But they do pay you that to design. So here's what you need to know. First is the following. The first thing you do is learn the network. What do I mean by the network? And if you are a training program, you're going to learn it on your own. I'm going to tell you. From the network perspective, you must know routing and switching. What does that include? It includes interior gateway protocols such as OSPF and intermediate systems. It includes exterior gateway protocols such as BGP, and you must know eBGP and IBGP. It means IP addressing, subnetting, and route aggregation, you must know. It means knowing when to use static routes versus dynamic routes. It means knowing when to use IPsec versus SSL versus using private lines, otherwise known as direct connections. It determines you need to know when you need to do a layer 3 link versus a layer 2 link and how to address those links. It involves learning NAT, and a NAT is not just to connect to the internet. Static NAT, dynamic NAT, one-to-one NAT, one-to-many NAT, all those forms of NATs, NATs in between organizations, NAT to the internet, NAT everywhere. Then switching. So understanding of VLANs, understanding of spanning tree, rapid spanning tree, knowledge of HSRP, VRRP is kind of critical too. That's kind of more routing than switching. Trunking, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking protocols, Q and Q tagging, 802.1q tagging, Ethernet over MPLS, MPLS-based network, software-defined network. That's kind of your intro to the networking piece. Now, during next, you need to know servers and server virtualization. So you really need a good background on how servers work, the hypervisors, the containers, the firewalls, all those kind of things. Those things are really, really, really essential for you to know. So then firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, then you must become an expert on block storage, file storage, object storage, because it's going to take that. And it's not enough to know that EBS is block storage. That's not even close. You got to be able to design someone's storage. So you need to know exactly how these kind of things work. So then there's that. So that gives you some of the tech piece. You've got to know about Active Directory. You've got to know about clouds. So then how do we get our students' knowledge? Our students go to our data center via VPN. Our students work and set up server virtualization. They build containers. They build firewalls. They build VPN concentrators. My students set up file sharing and NFS file sharing for Linux and Unix. They set up server message block file sharing. My students set up the LAMP stack for web applications. And you know what my students do, Dorian? You know how my students become great? They build a cloud from scratch. And I don't need a VPC. My students all build a cloud on our servers. So every student I have knows how to build AWS or GCP or Azure from scratch. I don't have a student that couldn't walk into any company and say, I'll build you a cloud in your data center. For a hybrid cloud, like a Nutanix cloud or an OpenStack, all my students build the cloud. And then, Dorian, what we have to do is we've got to get you not your emotional intelligence up there. So you've got to get some emotional intelligence training if you haven't done it. I know personally, between Cisco and between what I put into it, about $250,000 I spent on leadership training, presentation skills training, executive presence training, emotional intelligence training, and it is critical for the architect. So you need to get a lot of presentation skills, lots of executive knowledge, meaning CXO relevancy, because you got to be able to speak differently to the CEO versus the CFO versus the CIO versus the CTO versus the VP of IT, etc. Then you've got to learn ROI modeling, which is there, and that'll basically get you there. And you've got to learn how to do some specialized executive writing, everything from where to put the executive summary to how many words per sentence. Then realistically speaking, you should learn some negotiation and you should learn some sales skills. That is the skills that you necessarily need to do. Now, there's lots of ways you can get that. We've got a program that I made and put together to be low cost because these are very expensive skills to learn. I do it pretty much just as a service to the community because I know how much of a difference it can make. But Dorian, these are the skills that you need to get hired as a cloud architect. It is not just a technical position. Not at all. These are the skills. And I want you to be successful. And if you master these skills, Dorian, you will be so wildly successful, you won't even believe it. But these are the skills. It's not the technical skills. The technical skills are engineering skills. Those hand-on skills are engineering skills. Those scripting skills are engineering skills. Those SysOps skills are engineering skills. Those DevOps skills are engineering skills. All good skills. All good skills, but for somebody else's job. And that's why I just wanted you to have everything because I want you to be super successful. You're more than welcome, Dorian, and I'm so happy you were here. And hopefully you'll join us this afternoon for our subnetting workshop because that'll help you. And please, if you're looking for your first cloud architect job, please join us on that Monday webinar. I know it'll be a big help for you. And Chris, if you want to bring the next question in. Sandy, let's say, okay, Cloud J. I haven't seen anything about coding or programming, but it's in all the job descriptions. What do we need for a cloud architect? Cloud J, that's hilarious. I'm actually going to have some cloud architects come on my YouTube channel and do a live stream, and we're going to laugh and joke about this. So, the funny thing is you see these job descriptions, and then the reality is none of us architects code. In fact, I know architects at every cloud provider, and if I ask them if they code, they start laughing at me. They're like, Mike, architects don't code. You've been an architect for decades. When did you ever code something? Have you ever once coded anything in your life? And I said, I'm an architect. I don't code. They're like, so what's going on? So I got to tell you, we see this all the time. I speak to hiring managers all the time. I speak to recruiters all the time. And when I ask them what's going on with coding, they're like, HR put something there. And they're like, call. And I actually started calling hiring managers for people when I started seeing these things. And they're like, I don't want coding. And they're like, I don't know where that came from. It came from HR when they wrote a job description. So Cloud J, there's two things that are going on. The first thing is what's called the cut and paste job description. So a lot of people don't even know what the cloud is. And since they don't know what the cloud is, they don't know what a cloud architect is. So basically they go to Indeed or ZipRecruiter, they see a job description, they cut and paste it. They're like, okay, this looks remarkably comprehensive, but it doesn't have any of my needs in there. So then they add their needs, paste it in there, save it. And then the next person takes that job description. And Cloud J, I got to tell you, I look at a lot of job descriptions and you can see many of them all came from the same place. So there's that. But I really want to talk about what really is going on here, Cloud J, is the job descriptions and who writes them, as it's HR. So this is really, really important to understand. So when a company posts a job, they get bombarded with requests. To put it into context, like nobody's ever going to consider the cable company to be a high performance organization, like ever. Do you know that cable companies typically get 3,000 applications for a single job? And that's a cable company. And, nobody thinks of the cable company as, number one in customer service. I want to work here. So that's a cable company. Now, when you're dealing with a good company or a high performance company, you're dealing with like 5,000 applications or more for a single job. Now, what happens is HR can't possibly go through 5,000 applications for a single job because look at HR. They may have 100,000 jobs open, like at Amazon, and 5,000 applications for a single job. So what happens? HR puts roadblocks up there. 10 years of winning Olympic gold medals, 600 years experience in Kubernetes. And you see it every day. The job descriptions will have more experience requirements in a technology than even the tech even existed. And you look at it and you go, what the heck is this? And then if you know somebody in the company, you can call somebody in the company and you can ask them. And they're like, yeah, this is what we do. We design, we do this. So the key is first knowing. Secondly, these job descriptions got so ridiculous. And I will also tell you that of every job I've gotten in my life, I never met more than 25% of the requirements of the job description at best, if ever. I always looked at the job descriptions, whatever, I'm just going to apply and deal with the recruiter. So there's that. But here's what happened. These job descriptions became so silly and so crazy and so goofy that Gartner, who's an organization that evaluates technology, and they are known to be the industry leading people. Want to know the best cloud? Who's the market leader? Ask Gartner. Want to know who has the best switch? Ask Gartner. Want to know who has the best firewall? Ask Gartner. And what happened is Gartner said, let's start asking. Let me go ask the CEOs and the CIOs and companies, what do you want in your cloud architects? And Gartner said, wait, the CIO is the person that pays for the cloud architect. So you've got the CIO, you've got the VP of IT, the director of IT, the hiring manager. So the CEO is basically writing your check. So then Gartner started, let's go ask cloud architects, let's go ask chief information officers, what do they want in a cloud architect? And you know what? CIOs overwhelmingly responded. And you know what the CIOs responded with? What we actually do as architects. So this information was published in CIO Magazine very recently, and I will pop it in the chat window so you can all see it, so you know we don't make it up. This is exactly what I've done my entire career, and all the other architects that I know are doing the same thing. And according to this published study, according to Gartner, the three main high-level responsibilities of a cloud architect are leading the cultural change for cloud adoption, developing and coordinating a cloud architecture, and developing a cloud strategy and coordinating the adoption process. Wait, leading the cultural change for cloud adoption, developing and coordinating a cloud architecture, and developing a cloud strategy and coordinating adoption? That's design and leadership. That's it, design, leadership, and sales. And then when you ask these CIOs, what do you want the people to do every day? They say help hire, finding the talent with the necessary skills, assessing applications, software, and hardware, creating a cloud broker team, establishing best practices for the cloud across the company, overseeing governance and mitigating risks, working closely with the IT security people to monitor privacy and develop incident response procedures, managing budgets and estimate cost, and operating at scale. Now, I really want to go through this one more time with you. Design, lead, change, optimize. Note what you didn't hear. You did not hear coding once. You did not hear SysOps once. You did not hear DevOps once. You did not hear software development. Do you know why people don't get hired? I'm going to tell you right now. I interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people, and they're studying Terraform. They're studying DevOps. They're studying SysOps. They're studying Python. They're studying Node.js. They're studying everything other than architecture. And when you want to be an architect, you've got to be an architect. You've got to be good at somebody else's job. So coding is great if you're a DevOps engineer. Coding is great if you're a cloud engineer. It's required. But if you're an architect, not only is it not required, it's not your brand. The brand you want is a systems designer. The brand you want is an executive. The brand you want is a leader. If you have the wrong brand, the customer assumes you're wrong. If the customer assumes you're wrong, they won't hire you because they're going to think you're wrong. So build the brand that's best for your career. That's why I go through these things. That's why I want you to become great. That's why I want you to have every option, and programming and SysOps and DevOps, they are very important things, but not for architects, for other people. If you are laser focused and great at your job, you'll be great. I want you to understand the reason architects get paid as much as doctors and more than most lawyers is a reason. It takes a lot of business knowledge, a lot of executive knowledge, and a lot of system design to be able to do the architecture job. That's what raises our value. We get paid a lot because we can transform a business, not because we can code. I can find a coder very inexpensively anywhere. That's not our job. So be great at the job. You don't want a doctor, and let's pretend it's a doctor. A doctor that would learn a doctor learning coding is about the same as an architect learning coding. Why? It's not related to our job. So if a doctor went to school by becoming a house cleaner, a chef, going to veterinary medical school on the hopes that that's going to make him a great doctor, it doesn't make sense. So being an architect, learn to be an architect and get cloud hired. And that's why we're doing these things, so we can keep you in the right path to get cloud hired, because I want you to have the best lives. Let me tell you, these architecture jobs are really great. I've had them for basically 2 decades, and it's been the best thing that ever happened to me. And I want you to have as much success and fun in your career as I did. I absolutely loved it. Enjoy your career, and architecture is great. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Sandy, let's say I take your career program and you become much more competent, you're ready with the necessary skills. Will organizations take me seriously because you turn 30 next year? Yeah, 30 is a perfect age. They'll take you very seriously. Here's the thing. If your emotional intelligence is good and the je ne sais quoi or gravitas is good, people don't know. Here's something funny, Sandy. When I was 34 years old, I was an enterprise architect in a very serious position. In fact, my role was a cross between a business architect and an enterprise architect. And let me tell you, I absolutely loved it. It was an amazing, amazing, amazing career, Sandy. And I remember being at a dinner table with our VP and 11 directors and there. And I remember my manager, who was 45, saying, "My God, I used to be the youngest executive. I'm still the youngest executive on the team right now, right?" Here I was at 34. I had gotten a job on that team around 32. I went there and I was ready to say, "Hey, guess what? I'm younger." And there was an executive coach in that room who's also one of my best friends in the world, who was also my mentor. And she kicks me when she saw I was ready to tell anybody how old I was. And she shook her head no when I looked at her. And I asked her afterwards, she says, "Michael," she says, "it's okay and wonderful that you're young. Look how far your career's grown because you focused on this, this, and this." But she says to me, "Nobody needs to know your age. So keep dressing seriously, overdress, over-deliver, under-promise like you keep doing, and you're going to be good. But don't remind people of your youth." So 30 is the perfect age, because at that point, you've got enough experience in life that people believe you. And at the same time, you're still able to learn very rapidly. But the point is and we have a video, Chris from my team with Puppet here. I've gotten 22-year-olds very good, several $100,000 a year jobs that basically are good. And I've done the same thing for 60-year-olds. It really doesn't matter to me. We just have to play the game differently. When somebody's younger, we have to play off of their energy and enthusiasm and that fireball ability to learn quick. When someone's a little older, we focus on the seniority and the maturity and the wisdom that comes. It doesn't matter. It's how you play the game. It's how you sell your product. It's how you position the product that you have. And there's winning things for younger people and older people. Perfect age. We can easily work with that. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Mohammed Faye. "Hey, thanks. Your videos are very useful. Advice to me the other day was really good. You never wanted to do the CCNP due to the fact that you were doing high-level networking with an IXP for 16 years. Well, here's the thing, Mohammed. If you've got strong networking background, really strong networking background, then it's not necessarily so important to do the CCNP. So the question is, what is your networking background, Mohammed? If your networking background is layer 1 stuff because you're running cables, do the CCNP. It's going to help you. If your networking background is routing and switching, and you've been working with BGP, and I don't mean configuring it, but I actually mean designing, but even configuring it would be helpful. And you've been designing OSPF and designing your areas, for example, and describe what it should look like. And you're used to designing IP addressing schemes, and you've got this on your resume for 16 years, then guess what? You don't need much. You can do that, certified solution architect professional, work on your business acumen, your executive presence, your executive communication skills, leadership skills, and you're going to be good to go. But if, for example, you've been doing layer 1 or layer 2 stuff, there is no layer 1 stuff on the cloud. And for the most part, there's no layer 2 stuff on the cloud too, or almost none of it. So because of that, you're going to be in a situation where you need to know something different. So that's kind of why I'm talking about the things that I'm actually referring to. And these are the reasons that I want to make sure what we're talking about. So this is exactly why we're describing what we're describing. So go out there and do it. You can be absolutely great. You can be truly, truly amazing. If you've been working with it and you can position on your resume all your architecture work and networking, then you don't need it. But if you can't, that CCNP is relatively easy for someone that's got a good networking background. And boy, does that separate you from everybody else. And that is a good brand to have on your resume, the CCNP. The CCDP would have even been better, but unfortunately Cisco canceled it. Chris, if you want to bring in the next one. Vishal, do we need you to learn Red Hat before starting it? No, Vishal. So here's the thing. If you're one of my students, you'll be learning Linux inside of the program. Why? When you build the cloud, it'll be on Linux. When you set up your virtual machines, they'll all be on Linux. All the servers are on Linux, and all my students learn Linux along the way. So no, it is absolutely not necessary to learn anything before starting our program. I have a simple philosophy. Regardless of someone's background, I start at the beginning. And I find that by doing it and focusing on deep fundamentals, even if we have to redo about 2 or 3 weeks to get everybody to a baseline level, when someone's fundamentals are good, then I can start rapidly doing it things. And that's how I could, realistically speaking, get people through my program. And for example, everybody gets past the certified solution architect professional, but that's nothing. That's like 8% to 10% of what's necessary to get hired. But everybody will do that. Everybody will get the business skills. Everybody will get the presentation skills, the executive presence, everything they need. But we do that by level setting and starting. So no, you don't need to do Red Hat first or anything else you could learn along the way. Look at it this way. I went from internal medicine to architect very quickly. I've worked with lots of career changers along the way. So realistically, it doesn't matter. What matters is this, Vishal. The mindset of I won't quit until I win. The desire in your heart to go win. Hard work, energy, and enthusiasm towards learning the things that are put in front of you. And then you're successful. It's a matter of just fighting through. Taking the project, breaking it down into manageable steps, and do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. You do that, you'll be wildly successful. I know you don't need to do Red Hat before starting it. Varun, does cloud architect position require any experience? Okay, so let me kind of translate that. Generally speaking, architecture positions do desire experience. Now, having said that, I get students hired with no experience all the time. Competency is the key. Experience is something different. So I've interviewed 5,000 people in my entire career, Varun. 5,000. Now here's what I'm going to say. After interviewing 5,000 people, I've hired 10. So Varun, I'm going to make this really clear. I've interviewed 5,000 people. I've hired 10. Before I started this program, I interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people. Not a single one was hireable. And out of the 1,000 AWS certified people, including 150 that had a certified solution architect professional, almost none of them knew anything about storage, anything about virtualization, anything about networking, anything about DNS, anything about security, or IAM. What almost everybody knew exclusively of Varun Raj was the name of a service and how to configure it, which is exactly what they're being taught in certification courses. The name of the service and how to configure it. Now, I want you to think about the architect job right now. And this is why it's complicated, and it's not hard to get hired if you have the right skills. If an architect like me needs to go walk in to the CEO and then ask that CEO about their business, ask them about their business goals, their business challenges, their business pain points. And then, Varun, after I do that, I've got to baseline the organization systems. And I've got to talk about their network, their data centers, their security, all of it. And I might need Varun to take a team of engineers, and that team could be 50 engineers strong, and it might take them 6 months of information gathering, being on site with the client, finding out all their servers, all their containers, mapping out all their addresses, just to figure out what they even have. And my job as the architect there, Varun, might be to lead that team of cloud engineers that are doing that baseline. So there's that. So my job is now a leadership position. I've got to do requirements gathering. Then, Varun, after I get all the requirements, I got to do system design. And then I got to write it up. This system design, I got to draw the photos of the system design, which goes with the write-off. I probably have to respond to an RFI or an RFP somewhere along the way. Then I've got to go present the solution back to the customer, get their input, modify the solution, and at some point I've got to go sell this, and most likely I'm going to be part of negotiating the deal. So those are all those things we do, Varun, Raj, as architects. Now, what do most people do when they want to become an architect? Well, they buy their certification course, which teaches them the name of the service, S3, and then they go configure their buckets and set up an IAM policy and do all this. No, Varun. The architect, me, that went and met with that client, that led the group of engineers to baseline it, to design the system and presented and sold it, I don't configure it. Ever. In fact, I've been an architect for almost 25 years. And when I shifted from engineering to architecture, I haven't touched the command line in over 20 years because I've been an architect, and architects don't configure, architects design. So the problem where people get stuck and why they can't get hired first is they're studying Python, they're studying sysops, they're studying DevOps, they're studying configuration, which is the skill for everybody else's job. And while I went to school and learned how to practice medicine and even had my own internal medicine office for a little while, I am not an expert at taking care of somebody else's horses. And if I went to apply for a veterinarian job to go take care of somebody's dog or somebody's horses or somebody's cows, they'd look at me and say, Mike, you human medicine, I get it, but cat, dog, and alligator and horse medicine, that's not you. You need special school for that. So learn the skills for your career, Varun, and only your career, not anybody else's career, and you will have an amazing architecture career, and you can get jobs with no experience. But you got to be great. You got to focus on building an elite brand. You got to build a cloud architect brand. You got to be so emotionally intelligent, likable, and have so much presence that they forget you're new. So when you're new, it is even more important to learn all the non-technical pieces, because it goes back to this thing in the interview. 50% of your interview score is technical, 50% is non-technical. So by focusing on the non-technical, in addition to the technical, here's what kind of things that you're actually talking about. Focusing on making you so likable. So if you get 40 out of 50 on your interview score, on terms of what you're actually doing, and then you get a 50 out of 50 on the likability-ness of things like this, now what you're talking about is you are in a position to truly transform business and stand out and stand away from the crowd. So because of that, these are the reasons that it's not hard to get these jobs first if you have the right skill. But why do most people have a problem is they have every skill other than architecture. So be an architect and go get yourself a great architect job, and it'll take great care of you. Ayansano Wana, what interview tips can you recommend for the position of data center technician of Amazon? How can one prepare for such an interview? Well, Aysana, as it turns out, our company just released an interview training program designed for all tech careers. And I'm going to give you some tips that include our program and tips that include outside of the program. So ours is based upon me coaching people for 20 years. And we also collaborated with IT Excel, one of the preeminent recruiting firms in New York. They've been around for 20 years. They're a national firm, and they've got 20 recruiters. So basically 400 plus years of experience went into us creating this interview program. For years, I've charged about $400 an hour for private interview consulting. We've launched this course at $199, and there may actually be a special launch discount sale on it. I'm not sure, but Chris from my team can tell you if there is. But there's something going on like that. So keep that in mind, that we've got a training program for it. Now, when you're dealing with Amazon or any of these FANG companies, they are huge believers in the behavioral interview. And I made a video on behavioral interviews just yesterday. So there's two kinds of things that you really want to do when you're dealing with Amazon. The technical part of these interviews is typically extremely basic from what all of our students tell us, but then again, our students are very prepared for these interviews, and they typically think the technical piece is very basic, but they're very focused on these behavioral interview pieces, and they're also very focused on their leadership principles. So Aysana, when you get asked a question from AWS, You have to frame the answer in the forms of their leadership principles. So there's a bunch of leadership principles. You must know those leadership principles. If you don't, it'll be near impossible for Amazon to hire you. I want you to literally pretend that you're at home, practice a bunch of interview questions, and try to answer them in ways that are incongruent and in line with AWS interview principles. They really need that. So for them, there's that. Now, the second side of this is AWS is huge on behavioral interviews. And a lot of these tech companies are huge on behavioral interviews. Now, there's good and bad on behavioral interviews, but I want to let you know the theory behind the behavioral interview. The theory on the behavioral interview is that if you did something in your past, like a mistake, you're probably going to do the same stupid thing in the future. That's the concept of a behavior interview, that if you consistently make this mistake, you're going to keep making this mistake in the future. So I test behavioral interviews for two reasons. They actually negate learning and education. I'm all about education and learning changes behavior. And behavioral interviews don't take that into account. So there's that. And the other thing is behavioral interviews, there's a series of questions that we now all ask. And everybody knows that there's a level of answers that are right, even though there's no such thing as a right answer, but there's certain answers that are palatable for the employer and basically not palatable for the employer. So these behavioral interviews force people into a position they've got to practice coming up with artificial answers to artificial questions. So I found out there's going to be questions like, tell me about a time that you messed up. And when you answer these questions, what you want to do is you want to frame them. And you want to frame them in a matter that's going to be there. It's going to be easy for people to understand. So typically speaking, people typically use the STAR method. And basically what you're going to talk about is you're going to tell them about it, the situation, and which is basically what was going on at the time. And then you'll talk about the task, what was your responsibility in the situation? What task did you have to do? You'll typically describe the action or the address, the things that you did to fix whatever needed to be done and the ultimate result. So the situation, what it is, the task was what's your responsibility at the time. The action is the action that you took to go fix things or address it. And the result is ultimately what happened. So it's a question of your problem solving skills. So Chris from my team is going to leave a link to the video for the behavioral interview. Now, Isana, we've got about 10 free videos on our YouTube channel, which are basically teaching you how to answer questions, although most of them are geared towards architects. So we've got a really, really, really impressive interview program. People have bought it, the pre-launch, and I've already been getting emails from people that are like, oh my God, Mike, I can't believe that you produced this at our price like this. So there's that. And that, our success rate on interviews is very, very high because we've got lots of experience doing it. So that's one option for you. But if you're not doing that option, what I want to tell you is make sure you learn the STAR method. Make sure you get familiar with behavioral interviews and make sure that you inject those 16 leadership principles into the AWS conversations with people, and that will substantially increase your chances of getting hired. So look at those things and find a way to put those leadership principles into your answers, and that will maximize your chances of career success. At least that's with AWS. Hi, Friday. Hi, Mike. Thanks for the work you do. What if the last climbs don't work for your schedule? Can you go through the program by watching the recordings? The answer is yes, you can, because we record every live class and you can still ask questions. Now, what most people do Friday is that they can't attend our classes due to work because they still partially attend them. And what I mean by that is they pop in for a half an hour, an hour. In the beginning of the class or the middle of the class, they pop in on Zoom. They ask some questions if they have it. We address their questions immediately, and then they go watch the replay. And then the replay is available that night. So realistically speaking, nobody loses anything. So we've got lots of people that can't attend the classes, but they can always watch the replay of the class, and they can ask us questions via Slack in between classes, obviously. And they're still going to be turning in assignments for feedback in between classes. So all these kind of great things are coming. So people still do it and are successful going through it all the time. But we still like people knowing that they could or should try and pop into class, even if it's just once per week. And even if it's only for a half an hour, because if you've got some questions, we want to make sure that you're there. We like to periodically see you just so we can give you an opportunity to basically do a little mini presentation on something in addition to the ones that we have you do in assignments, and then you'll be great. So we have lots of successful people under these auspices Friday, and you'll do well too. Millicent, hi, Mike. How long should it take to be ready for the SAP if studying full-time 10 hours a day? Everybody's learning rate is different. Studying 10 hours a day, I would say within 2 weeks, a lot of people could be able to do that if they've got a good tech background. I would say if they have a weaker tech background, I would say 10 hours a day within a month, somebody should easily be able to pass that exam with no background in tech whatsoever. But everybody is different, and that's really the key. You know, it depends on how well you read and how much pain you can tolerate. For example, I became a CCNA in 4 days. I just locked myself in a room. No, I've coached a lot of people through CCNAs over the years. Cisco Certified Network Associate. From medicine, I was able to sit there and do nothing other than read. And I'm also a martial artist, so my body was in pain. I would just breathe through it and I'd be okay. But that was sheer insanity. And I've taken some of my best and brightest through CCNA programs, and I've, mentored them periodically. And some of them have taken 2 months. But some of them that took 2 months to get through that program were so good by the end of the 2 months, they were like CCNP level. So everybody's different, Melissa. Here's the thing, Melissa. I want you to know the content. And if it takes you 3 months, it'll take you 3 months. If it takes you 4 weeks, it'll take you 4 weeks. And if it takes you 1 week, even better. What really matters, Millicent, is not just how fast it takes to pass that exam. It's how fast it takes for you to do all the stuff. In the end, that certification just gets you the interview. But what really clinches the hire is the technical competency, the soft skills, the emotional intelligence, the leadership skills. That's the hiring piece. So take a little longer if you need for the Certified Solution Architect Professional, but don't skimp on the training for the job. That's what matters. And thank you so much, Millicent. Really appreciate your kind words and feedback. Tyrone, thank you so much. The classes are awesome. I so appreciate your kind feedback. Hope it's always great to see you, and I hope it's a nice day in South Africa for you today. Vishal, what are the fundamentals do we need to clear the solution architect? Well, if you're asking how to pass the exam, that's different in terms of how to get hired. Passing the exam, honestly, is just knowledge a little bit about the services and how to configure them, which is not related to the job, but it's very simple. Honestly, the easiest thing to do to pass one of these exams is you could take my completely free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate training course, and then you could take Andrew Brown's from Free Code Camps, free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate training, and you could read my completely free AWS Certified Solution Architect Associate book. Chris from my team can pop the links to all those things in either the chat box or the description. He'll make sure that it's there somewhere. And that's all you need to do. So Andrew Brown's course, which is very focused on certification. Our course, which is very focused on the actual architectural design and to some degree certification, but mostly we're more focused on the employment side of things. And that's why we're not certification people. We're about getting people hired, not getting people certified. We do free certification training. And the reason we do our free certification training is not to get people certified, because all the stuff out there gets people certified. It's easy. We do our free certification training because most of the content out there is the name of the service and how to configure it. And architects don't configure. So 99% of the certification training out there is completely irrelevant for architects. And because most of these courses that are being taught by non-architects that are teaching architect classes, we feel so bad for the community that we just decided to do free certification just to give it to the community, because I don't want anybody to have to buy one of these courses from a 10x AWS certified person that only memorized the answers for an exam and is now teaching a course based on memorized answers that doesn't know things, because then they don't get hired in the end. So Vishal, like I said, just to pass that exam, very simple. All you need to do is as follows: watch our completely free AWS Certified Solution Architect Bootcamp, match that with our free book, then maybe go to the Andrew Brown's free course, and it's a great course. It's very spot on for certification piece, and then you should be done, and you can do it all completely free. Sani, thank you for answering your questions today. Last question: what does the average salary look like between a cloud security architect and an enterprise architect? Sani, here's the key. When we talk about averages, you have to understand what's going on. I will tell you that the range for these positions, specifically like a cloud architect or an enterprise architect, starts around 120 and goes to about 400. on average. Now, there's a big difference in this range, and it sounds like a big range. So here's the difference. The technical skills, Sandy, will get somebody upwards of up to $200,000 a year. Beyond that, it is all related to leadership, business acumen, emotional intelligence skills. So those skills are the difference. So when I train my architects, I give them enough technical skills to be good, but I focus more on those leadership skills, those emotional intelligence skills, the business acumen, the je ne sais quoi gravitas. And the reason I do it is it makes my people stand out from the crowd when it comes to getting their first job, but it also can potentially double or triple their salary long-term by teaching more leadership skills. So average salary is going to be between, say, 120, 140, all the way to 200 based upon where you're at, or basically based around to 400 based upon your skills. So your skills are not just the technical skills. The things that get the architects paid more are their knowledge of business and their ability to transform the business. If you can solve $1 billion problem, paying you $10 million is cheap. So your salary is determined based upon your transformation ability, not your technical ability. That's the hardest lesson to learn. And I got to tell you, when I started, I focused on my technical ability because I thought that's where it was. And I noticed, yes, I'm now a lead architect, but in those days, I was a technical solution architect as opposed to a solution architect. The technical architects are really engineers with a pretty title, whereas an architect is more of a business person. So that's the difference between a solution architect and a technical solution architect. The technical solution architect is real engineering-like. The solution architect is more business-oriented. So there's that. So that's the determination of your salary. It's how specialized you want to be, how much business acumen you want to be, and how well you can command the room. Those are the things that really make a big difference. So much more on your soft skills and leadership and as such than actual on your technical ability, but lots and lots of options. And we get paid very well to do what we need to do. Chris, if you want to bring in the last one or the next one. Rod, and good morning, Mike. Hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well, Rod, as well. What is the best way to make yourself stand out in the job market in cloud computing? And what are the ideal things people are looking for? Okay, so here's what hiring managers desire, Rod. Someone that is technically competent, someone that is trustworthy, someone that is safe, someone that knows what they know and knows what they don't know, someone that's energetic, someone that's enthusiastic, someone that's really passionate about the work, someone that brings out the best in others, or someone that's emotionally intelligent, someone that is a great team player, and someone that goes above and beyond. That's what companies and hiring managers look for. So how do you make yourself stand out? Well, you do it a few ways. First, you've got to build the portfolio of expertise. So everything you do should be completely aligned with your career. So if you wanted to be a cloud infrastructure architect, let's look at your certifications. It's going to be like a CCNP or a CCIE, and it's going to be a certified solution architect professional. Then, if that's the case, what did you do on your resume? Ideally, it will talk about the network and the transformation and nothing else. If you have certifications that are in other fields, for example, maybe don't put them on your resume because it's going to make your brand diluted. So you want your resume to look exactly there. So when people get 4 AWS associate certifications, they look like they've got 4 junior certifications and they look unfocused and unhireable. When someone's got a solutions architect professional and a CISSP, they stand out for a cloud security architect because they've got 2 professional things that are additive, one from industry, one from cloud, and that looks good. Now, on your resume, it should describe awards that you've won. Same thing for your LinkedIn profile. It should show metrics. You should not say designed a LAMP stack for an organization. It could be design new website that enabled organization to increase sales by 11%. The transformation, at least for the architect. For the engineer, it's going to be describing the coolness of the technology solution. For the architect, it's going to be how did it assist the business. So, make sure everything that's there. Now, your resume itself, the top line should scream README. Mine says Mike Gibbs, MS, MBA, CCIE, Google Professional Cloud Architect. And usually I list an AWS cert, but not always, just usually. So there's that. And then on your resume, you should have an executive summary which shows what you can do for the company. And then your resume should have publication sections and you should publish. So write a blog, but make it good. And if you write a blog, and I encourage lots of my students to write blogs because it's a good way for the world to know they exist, don't write something that's not perfect. Hire a grammar checker. Research it. If you're going to write a 2,500 word blog and you're not an expert, it should take you 3 weeks to do it minimum. Hire a graphics professional. Have it laid out, make it look beautiful. When it's so good, share it with the world. Yeah, there's a cost associated with hiring these professionals, but that's how you stand out. Go out there and build a network. Your network is your net worth. Get access to the highest quality training from the people that are actually doing the job. Ask people in these organizations. Go build some LinkedIn connections with people, but don't do it like other people. Go out there and send a nice note. I noticed you I saw your post today and I really enjoyed it. I'd like to connect with you so I can see more of your content, something there. And then when somebody spies, thank them for connecting and then comment on a few of their posts. And then maybe after a month or two of commenting on their posts, offer somebody a favor. And then after they offer them a favor and you've assisted them, then maybe you can say, hey, by the way, is there something in your company that you need? So that's another way you can do it. But how do you make yourself stand out? You publish on social media things that are inspiring. You publish things that are valuable to others. You don't post something that says, hey, I just made an S3 bucket, because it makes you look like you don't know, that you're just learning. Post something that shows how you can show the world how you can help them. That's really what it's about. Then it's about making sure that when you're prepared for the interviews, and then it's having that deep technical knowledge of the network, the data center, and how to design these systems or whatever it is for your career. And then it's just about making sure that you've got those stellar communication skills. So when you go on that interview, they just meet you and they're like, wow, I have to have that person on your team. It goes back to the same sales skills, negotiation, because you got to sell yourself into the job. When it comes down to it, is people that are more likable are more likely to get hired. So your likability factor is also so essential and so critical. See, when we're talking about these things, we're actually talking about a lot of different things. We're not actually talking about just the tech. So make yourself stand out by getting better certifications, not more of them, better ones. Better ones are professionals or experts. More of them are associates. That's going to dilute your brand and make you look bad. So deeper certifications, not more of them. On your resume, deeper skills. In your experience, highlight the things that are most impactful, awards that you've won. If you speak more than one language, pop it on your resume. If you've been published, pop it on your resume. These are the kind of things that make you stand out. So just be great. You don't have to work that hard, because in a world, if you interview 1,000 people, most likely 999 can't do the job. So be great. Focus on being your best self. Focus on being so great that you can solve customer problems. You won't even imagine how many people will actually come to you. It'll be that many, and it'll be truly, truly great. So that's my recommendation. And yes, you will easily stand out from the crowd that well. Mike, does the Go Cloud Career Team help those that are from Asia get hired? Brian, Raj, I've got students in every country that you can think of. I probably have 30 of them in India. I have some in Singapore. I've got some in Malaysia. I've got some in Australia. I've got some in all kinds of countries over there. So the answer is absolutely yes. Sri Lanka, all kinds of nice Asian countries. I've got wonderful students. So the question I have is, does anybody have any last questions for us? And I want to make sure that we say this. Today, at 1 p.m., we're going to do a 4-hour subnetting workshop. And it's not just going to be subnetting. So we'll start out with some subnetting. And then we'll teach the other way around, which is supernetting, which is used for route summarization. And because we're an architecture-focused company, we'll talk about IP subnet design, and we'll talk about layouts, and we'll talk about how we can integrate to the routing. And who knows, potentially, if we finish on time and everybody's doing good at the math, we might even throw in some BGP. But whatever it is, I promise you, it's going to be a good experience for your networking career or your cloud computing career, because these are essential things that everybody needs to know. So it's been wonderful speaking to you today. Rod, it was so nice to speak with you. Sandy, it was so nice speaking with you as well. And Look forward to seeing you back, everyone, at 1 p.m. today. And please don't forget, on Monday, we're going to host our How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. Highly recommend. We will tell you everything that you need to know to get hired, talk about how to leverage your past experience. We'll talk about, the things that hiring managers desire. We'll talk about bypassing HR so you don't get auto-rejected by HR. We'll talk about everything that we need to do to help you get cloud hired. This is Michael Gibbs. I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Architects, and I'm honored and privileged to be here with you today. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Take care.